Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Parallel Deku, back with another fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Became the Oracle Vigilante? Now before starting, please give this video a like. And subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku Midoriya was not having a good day. Granted, the start of his day was relatively normal. He was tripped, called names, Kaken threatened him, all normal behavior. The day got much worse near the end of school though. The teacher read out with a sneer that Izuku was applying to UA, and Izuku tried to shrink in on himself. The teacher didn't even care when Kaken stood up and strode towards Izuku, rage seeping off his form. Nobody made a move to stop him as he strode up to Izuku and picked him up from the front of his school coat. Izuku was left in the classroom bruised after school ended, packing his stuff. As he went to stuff his notebook into his bag, it was snatched up by two very long fingers. Izuku looked up and saw Kaken standing there, looking down at the notebook. He gave an angry "Heath" and blew it up, before throwing it out the window. Izuku was used to losing notebooks to Kaken, but he wasn't used to the words that came after. Go take a swan dive off the roof, and hope for a quirk in your next pathetic life. There Izuku Midoriya sat, skin more bruised or scarred than normal skin, shaken to the core by his childhood best friend telling him to kill himself. He felt numb. Sure, he had been told to kill himself before, but not by Kaken. Izuku didn't even remember when he left the school and started walking home, didn't even realize until he felt sewage start to enter his mouth and suffocate him. Izuku Midoriya felt numb. His hero, All Might, had just deflated in front of him. He went on about how 6 years ago, he suffered some great injury that took out half his lung and his stomach. Something like that? Izuku was too shocked to comprehend it fully. After All Might had finished, Izuku tried to bring himself back to the present so he could ask his question. Sir, can someone who's quirkless like me become a hero? Izuku had a bit of hope showing on his face, but it was all right. This was his chance to affirm his dreams. No, with one word, Izuku's world shattered. All Might looked pained, but he continued. It's too dangerous for someone without a quirk. I'm sorry, but you can't be a hero. Maybe you should look into other heroic professions. Maybe try being a therapist or a police officer. The boys in blue get a lot of slack for having villains handed to them, but it's a job that is invaluable to us heroes. I truly am sorry, my boy, but I must be going. Have a nice day. All Might strode past Izuku, leaving the boys standing in the same spot. He didn't cry. He didn't have enough energy to cry. He just wanted out. As he stepped towards the edge of the railing, he set his bag down and took off his red shoes. He climbed over the railing and looked down over the railing. Go throw yourself off a roof. I'm sorry, but you can't be a hero. I'm so sorry, Izuku, I'm sorry. Izuku looked over the railing, leaned forwards, and finally let himself fall. Maybe he'd get a quirk in his next pathetic life. Inko was worried sick. Her son had been missing for 3 days with practically zero trace of him missing. A knock on her door every other hour, every time getting her hopes up and shattering those hopes with a pained, "I'm sorry, ma'am." It was frustrating. Her little baby Izuku was missing and she couldn't do anything. Another knock at her door had her have a small hope in her chest, but it was snuffed out as soon as she opened the door. The plain-looking detective, Tsukachi, took his hat off and bowed. Ma'am, I'm very sorry. I frankly have no idea how to tell you this, so I'll be blunt. You're aware of the quirkless death rate, yes? Inko wanted to cry. She wanted to break down into tears, start screaming, grab the detective by the shoulders and beg for him to say it was just a joke, and that her baby Izuku was actually right around the corner. But his expression was dead serious. All she could do was nod. There is an 87% chance that a quirkless child will die due to a hate crime or suicide before the age of 18, and we suspect Izuku was part of this 87%. Due to there being no evidence of a hate crime, we have deemed it a suicide. The body was never found. Tsukachi lifted his head to look at Inko, who felt like she was barely holding on by a thread. The detective continued, guilt written all over his face. If, in case it was a hate crime, you would like to go into some sort of witness protection, we can arrange that. We have several other quirkless people and parents of deceased quirkless children in that program. We also provide some sort of therapy dash. Yes. Inko decided before realizing that she was talking. She felt like someone else had taken control of her body to make the decision. All right, we can get you in the program as soon as tomorrow. Just give us a call when you'd like us to pick you up. We'll sell your house and provide the cover story that you moved away. Tsukachi walked away, before turning around to look at her. I am truly sorry that you had to go through this. No parent should need to hear what I told you. Inko stood there for a minute, before she heard a familiar voice. Jesus, what happened with that a-hole? Why'd he look so down? Inko looked up to see Mitsuki walking towards her with 2 cupcakes in hand. As she looked at Inko's face, her eyes widened and she ran towards her. Oh God, oh no, Inko please. Please tell me Izuku is alright dash. Mitsuki, Inko felt a tear roll down her cheek for the first time since she first got the news. He's dead. He either was killed in a hate crime or he killed himself. Mitsuki stared at her, before ushering the woman to sit down on the stairs with her. They sat down and Mitsuki gave Inko a cupcake, who gladly ate it while crying. Inko, I'm so sorry. He was such a sweet boy. I can help you bury him if you'd like. They never found his body. They think that he either died in seclusion or the killer took his body as a trophy. Inko felt empty. A life without her precious Izuku, her baby. Mitsuki gasped and hugged her tight. I'm going into a witness protection type program to keep me safe. I'll see if I can keep contact with you. Can you tell Katsuki too? They were best friends, I'm sure he'd like to know. Of course, Inko. Anything for you. Do you want to come over to our place? I can make you something? Mitsuki asked, rubbing circles on her back. Inko shook her head. I have to get packed for tomorrow. I appreciate the offer though. Mitsuki helped her up and strode inside her house. Then I'm gonna help you pack and you can't stop me. Izuku woke with it. Stabbing pain in the back of his head and his left arm, and a brick pillow propping his head up. He sat up, his ribs hating the action, and rubbed the back of his head with his right arm. He was startled out of his thoughts by an odd noise. He looked over to a boy about his age, with purple hair and prominent eye bags, reading over a book. He looked up to Izuku and raised an eyebrow. Morning, suicidal beauty. Toshinori walked into the police station to turn in a villain, before going into Tsukachi's office. As soon as he stepped in and shut the door, he locked it and collapsed into his small form. He walked over and collapsed on the couch and let out a groan of pain. Bad day, huh? Tsukachi asked, not looking up from his computer as he typed furiously. No, just exhausting. I'm leaving the speed villains to Ingenium from now on. I had to run across town 3 separate times in 3 minutes. Toshinori sighed and sat up. What are you working on? Oh, don't even get me started. This case is a hellhole. A quirkless boy either killed himself or died in a hate crime, but there's no sign of where the body could be. I don't want to rely on the 13% chance he's alive, but I don't know what else it could be. He just seemingly disappeared. The last sighting of him was walking home from school when the sludge villain attacked. Actually, Tsukachi spun over to Toshinori. How the hell didn't I think of this? You were the one to turn in the sludge villain. Did you see a kid around then? About 165 centimeters tall, green hair and green eyes. Toshinori's face must have shown the horror on his face, because Tsukachi stopped talking. Huh, so you did see him. What was the last you saw of him? Toshinori swallowed. I saved him from the sludge villain, and when I was jumping away to leave, he latched onto my leg. Tsukachi's face twisted into horror, before Toshinori frantically waved his hands in front of his face. No, he didn't fall. Don't worry, he didn't fall to his death from my leg. He followed me onto a rooftop and asked if he could be a hero while quirkless. I said no, and left because my limit was practically up at that point. Toshinori internally winced, but was technically the truth. His limit was so near up that he couldn't even throw a punch in his muscle form. Tsukachi stared at the man, before slapping his forehead with his palm. You told a potentially suicidal, quirkless child that he couldn't be a hero and then left him on a rooftop? I didn't know he was suicidal. Tashinori complained in protest, and Tsukachi sighed. You have a point, and the circumstances did force you to leave, but, great. Well, that confirms that he killed himself, but… You said his body was never found, right? Tashinori tried. Yeah, and if he really did jump dash, Tashinori flinched at the blunt wording of it, but he supposed it was likely true. Then his body would have been found relatively easily. You think it's villains? Tashinori asked, worried. Tsukachi pinched the bridge of his nose. Likely. It might be him, maybe experimenting on Corkless Dash. He's dead, I killed him 5 years ago. Tashinori said firmly. They were not having this conversation again. You never saw the body Dash. You never saw the body of this Corkless child, and yet he is most likely dead. You just said that he could be alive due to villains. Tsukachi said, exasperated. End of discussion, there's a chance he could be alive. They sat in silence for a moment, before Tashinori silently got up and walked to the door. Before he could open it, he was interrupted by Tsukachi's voice. Do you really think he's dead? There was genuine concern laced in his voice. Tashinori lowered his head, hand shaking on the doorknob. Yes. I truly think that All for One is dead. Tashinori turned the knob and walked out of his office. Both of them knew it was a lie. Katsuki couldn't feel his body, his legs felt like lead. He fell limp against the couch with one sentence from his mother. Izuku Midoriya died, either in a hate crime or a suicide. Katsuki knew how the boy had died. He was the cause of death. His childhood best friend had just killed himself because of him. Katsuki wanted to punch something, he wanted to blow something up. Why didn't he see it going this far? Why wasn't he aware of it going this far? His blind hatred of the kid had made him forget that he was human too. A fact that not many people seem to be aware of, based on the reaction in class when the teacher responded to the question of, where is Deku? He and his mother moved away, they won't be coming back. The class instantly broke into chatter, speculation flying between them. Katsuki just put his head on his desk and tried to drown out the sound. Unfortunately for him, his friend had other plans. He felt a finger tap him on the shoulder, and he turned around to see the finger be at ease smiling at him. Do you think he finally took your advice? Knowing him, Deku probably failed at killing himself and got put in a mental hospital. Serves the Corkless birthright, thinking he could contend with you. Katsuki's vision went red, and the next thing he knew, he was kneeling on the finger BSDRD's chest as he coughed up blood, explosions popping in Katsuki's hands. The teacher put a hand on his shoulder, and Katsuki swatted it away angrily. What the hell, Bakugou, what the F did I do to piss you off this much? Shut the F up, you BD. You don't get to say shit about him. Katsuki punched him in the face, and a few kids pulled him off the a-hole as he coughed up blood. The teacher grabbed his wrist and pulled him up. Bakugou, office. Now. His tone left no room for argument, and Katsuki stormed out of the room. He wasn't going to the office though, he was going home. As soon as he got home, both his parents were out thankfully, he opened up his computer and went to the search bar. He quickly typed in, what makes a hero? Because Katsuki wasn't sure he knew yet. So where the hell am I? Izuku rubbed the back of his head as he sat up. He looked around at the small area he was in. It looked like an abandoned house after Endeavor was done with it. The other boy looked up from his book. My home. I know it isn't much, but I couldn't just leave you to bleed out on the sidewalk dash. You should've. Izuku interrupted. He stood up and walked towards one of the open walls, looking down the 4-story drop. I'm a worthless, corkless Deku. Just let me die, kid. First off, I'm your age. Second, whoever told you that being corkless made you worthless? Everyone, why? Everyone's now on my shit list, anybody else? The kid looked up to Izuku, a tired, deadpan look in his eyes that was only amplified by his eye bags. And for the first time in a while, Izuku let out a tired chuckle. A tired, genuine chuckle. No, that's everybody, I'm afraid. He held out a hand for the other boy, who had closed his book. Izuku Midoriya. The other boy took it and shook his hand. Hitoshi Shinso, but seeing as I just saved your demon life, you can call me Hitoshi. Likewise. Izuku nodded, and Hitoshi let out a snort. Okay, Hitoshi. Izuku stared at the other boy for a moment, before giving a playful shove. Not what I meant. Izuku grumbled, suppressing a smirk. Yeah, I get it, Izuku. He looked up to Hitoshi, a tear sliding down his face despite his best efforts to suppress it. Oh shit, what did I do wrong? Hitoshi stood up and walked over to Izuku, hesitantly putting an arm around him and pulling him into a tight hug. It's fine, it's been so long since someone other than my mom has called me by my name. The two sat in silence, Hitoshi quietly eating a granola bar as he studied. Finally, Izuku broke the silence. You're training to be a hero, right? That requires physical training as well as training your quirk. What are you suggesting? Hitoshi stopped eating his granola bar, looking up to Izuku. We have 10 months before UA. Let's do some training. It was 7 months until the next year at UA started. Shoyuda Aizawa was walking home from patrol at 5 in the morning, ready to pass for the afternoon out due to his lack of class that day. He walked by Dagoba Beach on his way home, before something caught his eye. He could see the beach. He looked around confused, and saw the entire beach was clean. Over at the far end of the beach were two boys, one laying in the sand with a purple cat-designed hoodie that was ripped up slightly, and the other with a green hoodie torn from the ribs down, green eyes blazing in the darkness, and covered in sand. He quietly approached them, trying to get close enough to hear what they were saying. There wasn't much to hide behind, so he instead opted for sneaking around in the shadows. It was still relatively dark out, so this was still feasible. As he approached, he heard the purple one speak. Stupidest reason you couldn't apply. Green playfully shoved purple as they started to separate the garbage from the metals. Look, Toshi, there is no way in hell that I could make it in. Why not at least apply though? Shoyuda stepped forward as quietly as possible. You know I can't, Shoyuda slipped slightly, only slightly. Quiet enough that Shoyuda could barely hear it. The green boy stopped talking as soon as the noise was made. He swirled around to look at the general area Shoyuda was in, who was completely still. Who's there? What do you want? There's nobody there, Zoo. Purple said quietly. He looked worried. Green looked around, making direct eye contact with Shoyuda. They stared at each other for just a moment before. You're right. Probably a cat or something. He turned back to the pile of garbage, and Shoyuda almost sighed in relief. If he had, he wouldn't have seen the shard of metal fly directly at his arm, and he dodged to the left just in time so it only grazed his costume. Green had a bandana over his mouth, and his hood was pulled up, so the only thing that was recognizable was his green eyes permeating through the night. Jesus kid, you trying to give me tetanus? Shoyuda rubbed where his costume had been cut, and looked at Green. Purple stood behind him, eyes wide in confusion and shock. Maybe, why are you here at this random beach? Understanding fluttered through his eyes, as he dropped his battle stance slightly. Today is Saturday, isn't it? Shoyuda nodded, confused. How the hell did you know I come back this way on Saturdays? Green laughed. I can see all, nobody is safe, Shoyuda. Shoyuda flung his capture scarf at Green, who got wrapped up in it within a moment. Purple just face-bombed. I told you that you shouldn't provoke heroes like this. How the hell do you know my name, kid? Shuda's hair flared up as he pulled the kid close with his capture scarf. The boy just chuckled at him. You're a teacher at UA, it isn't that hard to find out. By the way, Green kicked up the piece of metal that was thrown at Shoyuda earlier, and cut the scarf in a swift motion. I have a recommendation for a student. He bolted, grabbing Purple's wrist and darting into an alley. Before Shoyuda could process what happened, Green was on the roof with Purple. Shoyuda looked up at them and shouted. Who's the student? Is it your boyfriend over there? 1, he's more of a brother to me, Shoyuda. 2, you'll find out who it is. Shoyuda sighed as they sprinted out of view. He was too tired to chase after them, so he might as well just go home. He didn't want to deal with the paperwork of 2 paranoid kids who were cleaning a beach, so he didn't report it. Anyway, continuing what I was talking about before Eraserhead so rudely interrupted us, I can't because of 2 reasons. I'm quirkless and legally dead. Izuku said this matter-of-factly, like it was a statement. Hitoshi sighed. I'm not gonna convince you into applying, am I? Nope. Alright then, next topic. Wanna help me train my quirk tonight? Sorry, can't. I have a meeting. Oh, okay dash. Hitoshi stopped in his tracks as his brain tried to keep up. Wait, meeting? You're legally dead. Who the hell are you meeting? Please say it isn't a villain dash. It's not. I'm breaking into a support lab to get some gear for when I start patrolling. I want to try to hide my voice. Izuku patted Hitoshi's shoulder. It's okay, I'll be fine. Worst comes to worst, I run away and can't patrol for a while. Hitoshi groaned as they entered their makeshift home and started studying. After a bit, Izuku went to sleep and Hitoshi soon followed. Izuku left at about 3 in the morning, careful to avoid anywhere that Eraserhead was patrolling. He walked deeper into the center of the city. By the time he arrived at his destination, it was about 4 a.m. He looked up at the building. Hatsum Industries. Izuku had heard great things about this place, so here he was, trying to rob it. To be fair, he was leaving payment, but it was still illegal. So there he was, 3 stories up, climbing the side of a building. As he got to the correct floor, he slid open the window to the lab and toppled in with a grunt. As he stood up, brushing the dust off his clothes, he made eye contact with a girl. She was about his age, with pink hair. They stared at each other for a minute, blankly, before Izuku realized he'd been caught. I can explain dash. Perfect, I was looking for a test subject. You, Robert-kun, put this on and I won't tell the cops. She moved a pair of elbow-high socks into his arms, as he looked at the girl bewildered. Come on, put them on. Izuku hurried to put them on. Why aren't you reporting me to the cops? Izuku asked as the girl huffed and walked up to him to fix the gloves on his arms, pulling them up to his elbows and fitting small devices on his wrists. You're clearly interested in my baby's dash. The girl ignored Izuku's confused sputtering. And I don't have any test subjects, so here we are. At 4 in the morning, and I'm asking you to test out my babies. Am I fighting your children? Izuku whispered loudly, confused. No, my babies are my inventions. Oh, I just got an idea. If you make it through tonight in one piece, mentally or physically, then we should make a partnership. I can make your support gear if you test out any support gear for me. What's your hero name? Actually, are you a villain? No, you're too small to be a villain. Vigilante? She was now just fiddling with his gloves now, before stepping away. Alright, now hold your arm out and press your thumb down on the small button. Izuku, still bewildered, pressed on the button, and launched forward as a grappling hook flew out at incredible speed. It embedded itself in the wall and flinging Izuku into the wall face first. He slid down the wall and lay on the ground, groaning. The girl squealed in delight. Ooh, breaking and entering kun, those work perfectly. She helped him up, taking off the gloves. Yeah, they really do. Hey, what's your name? Izuku asked, tilting his head slightly to the side. Hatsum Mei at your service. You are. The girl, Mei, held a hand out, and Izuku took it. I'll tell you later, once we have a business deal up and running. For now, you can call me. Izuku trailed off, thinking of a code name. This was probably going to stick forever, so he needed to choose carefully. Deku was off the table, seeing as he discarded that title when he died. When he lost his uselessness. When he met Hitoshi. He remembered what he said to Shoyuta earlier. I can see all. He wanted to become a vigilante, not to be famous like heroes, but to save people. People like him, people who the heroes don't help because it doesn't help their career. He wanted to see all, even the people struggling in the shadows. He wanted to be Oracle. Hitoshi was studying, reading a book on quirk laws while doing pull-ups with his legs. The entrance exam was about half a year away, and Hitoshi needed as much training as he could get if he wanted to get into the hero course. He heard Izuku call for him from down the hall. What the boy needed at this time of night was beyond him, but he was about to go out for his first official patrol instead of just random crime-fighting escapades, so that was something. He walked into the room to see him suited up with several different gadgets. I see you've been busy, Hitoshi said blankly, looking the other boy up and down. He was wearing a short-sleeved green hoodie, a small amount of skin on his upper arms showing before it was covered by black elbow-high gloves with small wristbands around his wrists. The hood was up, covering his green hair, and he had a black mask covering his mouth. It had 2 dials where his cheeks would be, and he was fiddling with them. Over the top half of his face was a glass visor that his distinct green eyes shone through. On his back was a staff with a blade on the end that Izuku had told him before was called a naginata. His belt had a few knives on them, and his classic red shoes had been left alone. That I have. Remember the meeting I went to? Izuku ruffled through a small bag, shoving a few zip ties in as he pulled out another black mask and handed it to Hitoshi. Well, I also got some support gear for you. Those are called persona cords. They'll allow you to mimic someone's voice. Theoretically, it should still allow you to use your quirk on them too. Hitoshi felt tears welling up behind his eyes, so he quickly rushed forward to hug Izuku. The first thing he noticed was that he had some sort of armor under his hoodie. The second thing was how nice human contact felt. Izuku returned the hug after a moment of shocked silence, and they stood there for what felt like forever. Eventually they broke apart, and Izuku left for his patrol. Hitoshi was lucky he got a friend this good, one who cared this much for the random boy who dragged his near-lifeless corpse into an abandoned building. Izuku had taken down a few criminals and zip-tied them up. He didn't use his knives to fatally wound or outright kill, he just used them to slow people down. The worst that his blades had done was cut someone's pinky off, and that was some random drunk making unwanted advances on a girl. So that was warranted. As he tied up his third apprehension, he heard some wind move. The familiar footsteps ran through his head as he tried to place down who it was. He shot out his grappling hook to a rooftop, hearing the figure follow quietly. They were good at stealth, great even. Izuku could barely hear them, even with his special hearing aids designed for catching people sneaking up on him. The familiar footstep pattern, the way they rolled along buildings. Izuku snickered to himself. So, Shoyuta, you've come for a second chance at fighting me? Or did you spontaneously change your patrol route? Izuku kept running along rooftops, keeping track of where the Erasure hero was. After a minute of running, he heard the footsteps get lighter. Then they went silent. Izuku turned around, looking through the darkness. I really need to get Hatsum to make me night vision, he thought as he squinted through the darkness. He heard a faint crash in the distance, from the direction Shoyuta went. Izuku bolted after the noise. As he got within about 100 meters of the noise, he could hear the sound of concrete breaking. Eraserhead's labored breathing. A cry of pain followed by a smash of concrete. He heard a man taunting the pro, saying something about killing him. Izuku sped up, ignoring the burning in his legs as he pushed himself. A real hero wouldn't let a man die so easily. Not when they could prevent it. Shuta's vision was blurred. This man had a mutation strength quirk, and a dangerous one at that. He had incredible strength, speed, and better reactions. The villain was no match for Shoyuta. He was basically fighting a tank. An unfeeling, bloodthirsty tank. He groaned in pain as he tried to stand, taking note of his injuries. His left arm was broken, and he had a head wound. Probably a concussion judging by his vision. Blood trickled out of his slightly ajar mouth. The villain laughed to himself at Shuta's fighting resolve. Eraserhead, you're outmatched. Fighting quirkless against someone like me, you should have left this to a competent hero. I would have liked a little more challenge before killing you. But I guess I needed a bit more blood anyway. I'm not nearly Dash. The villain's eyebrow twitched, and he turned around and held his hand out. A knife impaled straight through it as he tried to catch it. He let out a yelp of pain as he yanked it out, and a small person landed in front of the villain. You should really pick on people your own size. The person, judging by their voice a 20-year-old man, said menacingly as he pulled a weapon from his back. Eraserhead squinted to make it out. It looked like a naginata, a weapon that Shoyuta hasn't seen nor heard of in a while. The villain took in the small man and laughed. Someone my own size? You look like a midget. Get out of here, kid. Your loss of life isn't worth the small amount of blood I'd get from you. The boy laughed to himself lightly, before putting the weapon on his back again. You're right, I am decently small compared to you, but Dash, he flung his wrist out, and a cable wrapped around the villain's waist. He flung himself towards the villain, slid between his legs, popped up behind him, and swung his naginata at the villain. He grunted in pain as it cut clean from his shoulder down to his hip, relatively deep as he stumbled forward. The 20-year-old mystery man quickly held his arm forward, and the grappling hook wrapped around the villain's head and stayed in the static position as the man turned his arm 180 degrees so his forearm was facing the night sky. He flung the villain into an alley wall, before walking into the small dust cloud and shoving his naginata into the villain's foot. Don't judge someone by their lack of apparent weakness. The villain had passed out from the pain, but the man had probably done that so he could check on Shuta's condition safely. He knelt down next to the hero, green eyes permeating through the night. Shoyuta stared at the man, before his eyes widened in recognition. Wait, are you Dash? Shoyuta, calm down. You're concussed, your left arm is broken and probably part of your skull. Just wait. You're likely only conscious due to adrenaline, and these wounds will hurt like a beach once the adrenaline isn't pumping through your veins like black coffee. The boy, Green, continued to bandage up some wounds on his body as they talked. How'd you know the coffee I like? Shoyuta groaned. The boy stared for a moment, then laughed lightly. Honestly, guess. But if anyone asks, it's because I can predict the future and see all. Can I see your phone? Why? Shoyuta asked, suspicious of Green. The last time they'd met was at the beach at 5 in the morning, after all. So I can call the cops and get you out of here? Green replied as if it was obvious. Shoyuta sighed and handed his phone over. He typed a few things out in it before calling someone. Hello, is this Naomasa? A P-Arginanti pause filled the air. Green laughed tiredly at whatever the detective was saying. No, Shoyuta just tried to fight a villain and got his butt kicked. I'm requesting medical. You have a tracker on Shuta's phone due to his occupation as a pro hero, so you know his location. Another pause. Oh Naomasa, you'll never find out who I am. After all, I'm a closed case. Oh well, see ya. Green shut off the phone and chucked it to Shoyuta. He sat back down next to the eraser hero, patting him on the shoulder. The pro dwarfed the kid Vigilante, but it didn't matter to him. Why'd you call Tsukachi specifically? I dunno, guess he's the only decent police officer out there. Despite his friendship with All Might. He spat out the end, making Shoyuta raise an eyebrow. What do you have against All Might? Did he arrest your parents? Shoyuta winced as he moved his head, and Green shot him a glare to keep him from moving. No, my parents are law-abiding citizens. The blonde oaf just doesn't know how the F to handle a situation if he can't approach it physically. Shoyuta looked at his phone, seeing it light up. A text from Hisashi. He quickly opened it, to see the text history. Shoyuta, your dumbass husband got himself beat the hell up, I'm sending med to him and don't worry. Proud of you two for getting married recently by the way, noticed Shuta's ring wasn't there last time I saw him. He's a good guy, I'd hate to see him die. Make sure to keep him alive, Hisashi. Oracle .. Shoyuta. P.S. His contact name for you is Loud Pretty Bird. Loud Pretty Bird. Shoyuta? Loud Pretty Bird. Who is this and is he okay? Shoyuta sighed at his phone. Did you really guess my password in order to blackmail me? He looked up to see the boy, Oracle, if his signature was anything to go by, on the rooftop. Don't worry, it's just friendly blackmail, Shoyuta. The ambulance will be here any minute. Say hi to Naomasa for me. He ran away. Shoyuta tried to stand up, ignoring the wail of pain from his body. Wait, what the hell did All Might do if he's gone? Shoyuta slumped against the wall, sighing in pain as he heard the sirens get louder. He looked to his right where the man was, and saw the villains start to stir. Shoyuta stood up, dizzy and disoriented, but standing nonetheless, and wrapped the rapidly recovering villain up in his scarf. Shoyuta groaned in pain and exasperation as the sirens got closer. He had a feeling this was going to be his very new problem child. Izuku rarely did day patrols. It was harder to escape from fights during the day. However, he did still patrol in the deep alleys occasionally. That's why he got a very bad feeling when he felt overwhelming heat approach him. He ducked into the shadows, and the number 2 hero Endeavor strode past him confidently. Izuku's brain whirred in a mix of fear and confusion, but he decided to follow the number 2 hero. Izuku had been collecting blackmail on different heroes in case he needed to startle them to make an escape or PSS them off. Normally, the personal information was harmless and just rare enough to get the heroes startle away from him. But for some reason, the higher in the rankings Izuku got, the worse the secrets got. Number 3 hero, Hawks, suffered from severe PTSD from large fires and was a pawn for the hero commission. His real name, erased from history, was Kigo Takami. He was bought by the Hero Public Safety Commission at the age of 6, and his mother was paid off to keep quiet. Number 1 hero, All Might, had a life-threatening injury on his left stomach. He refused to talk to Sir Night Eye due to a prior disagreement. He could only do hero work for 3 hours a day. His civilian name was Toshinori Yagi, and he was going to work at UA next year in order to find a successor. This was the stuff Izuku never wanted to know, but unwillingly found out before he started being a vigilante. Number 2 hero, Endeavor, had the highest property damage level to cases resolved ratio of any hero in the top 100, and had 4 children. Shudo Todoroki, Natsuo Todoroki, Fuyumi Todoroki, and Tuya Todoroki. The latter had died in a training accident at a HPSC training field, but the body was never found. His wife was put in a mental hospital when Shudo was 5 because she poured boiling water on his eye after a panic attack, and has remained there ever since. Endeavor also tended to use excessive force, once putting a man in a coma and damaging his lungs from smoke permanently because he pickpocketed the hero on a dare. His casualty rate was also the highest of any hero in the past 20 years, every year. In short, Izuku didn't trust Endeavor with using a proper amount of force. So he decided against what his gut was begging him to do, and followed the flaming man on the rooftops. He saw the man turn the corner and head to a store, where he was passed by a 20-something-year-old man with a knife and a wad of bills in his hands sprint past him and duck into an alley to dodge the fire that was thrown at him. Before he made it too deep into the alley, Izuku pulled him up with a swipe of his grappling hook. The man regained his composure on the roof, and Izuku looked him up and down. His wallet was slightly open, and he could see a picture of him standing next to a young girl about his age. He robbed that store to provide for his daughter, and Endeavor nearly killed him. Izuku quickly pulled out a wad of about 20,000 yen and stuffed it in the man's hand. "Here, you run and get back to your daughter. Use that to feed yourselves. What's your name?" he asked kindly, and the man looked from the money in his hand to Izuku. Thank you. I'm Akira Uraraka. How, is there any way I could repay you?" He had pads on all of his fingers. Izuku mentally took note of them. Was his quirk a 5-finger touch quirk? Those were decently rare, but, sheet, Endeavor was still after him. "Make sure you get back to your daughter safely. That's all I ask." With that said, he jumped into the alley and landed behind Endeavor. "Hey Todoroki. I heard you were looking for a future murder victim." Endeavor spun around with his arm ignited, staring down Izuku. "Who are you? What do you mean by future murder victim? If you kept chasing after that man, you would have killed him." He was just trying to get by dash. Izuku was cut off by Endeavor's voice. "You helped a criminal get away. Put your hands in the air, villain, and come quietly." Endeavor flared up, clearly a fire hazard judging by the small alley they were in, but he didn't seem to care. His ego was about as big as the flames constantly covering his body. "I agree, the villain in the alleyway should put their hands in the air." Izuku snarked at the man. After a moment of silence, Endeavor quirked an eyebrow upward in confusion. Izuku gave a dry laugh. "Well, go on, Todoroki. Put your hands up." Izuku could see the rage on the man's face building up as the flames rose and burned nearby plastic. Izuku could feel the heat from 15 feet away from the man. Provoking him was a bad idea, but Izuku wasn't the smartest. After all, domestic abuse is rather unheroic. Izuku preemptively dodged the incoming blast of fire that launched into the street, but that doesn't mean he got out unscathed. The heat from being so close to the fire burned, but Izuku pushed through and shot his grappling hook to the roof, landing with a roll. "Ha, Todoroki, you're dumb land-bound but is stuck down there. Endeavor interrupted him by launching himself up to about 5 feet above Izuku, hand extended ready to shoot flames at the boy. All Izuku could manage to say as he dodged out of the way was, "Oh shit, the forever number 2 can fly dash." Izuku scrambled away from where the flames had impacted, patting out his flaming pants. He needed Mei to make him a fireproof costume. As he ran rooftop to rooftop, dodging blasts of flame on pure instinct, Endeavor shouted at him, "Get back here, you filthy criminal." Weird that I'm the criminal, because my mortality rate is 100% lower than yours. Izuku dodged another fire blast, as it melted through a railing. I'm also not the one destroying the city over a couple thousand yen. You know, it's really funny to me. Your mortality rate is already incredibly high, but they're missing one. Izuku dove into an alley and started to sprint out to the outskirts of the city. He had a location in mind, and he was fully intent on going there to fulfill his plan. Who would that be, boy? Endeavor growled as he made chase behind Izuku, the latter rapidly approaching his destination. He flung himself up to a roof, careful not to damage any of the property, and dove off the roof moments later when a stream of fire launched at him and destroyed part of the roof. Endeavor launched himself into the air and shot a stream of fire at Izuku, sending him through the roof of a house. Izuku coughed up blood as he stood up and brushed his costume, mumbling to himself, "Goddamn flaming a-hole piece of dash." Izuku looked up when he heard a clang of metal, and his eyes met with 2 extremely confused stares. Morning. Shudo Todoroki was having a relatively normal morning. Fuyumi was making breakfast while Shudo studied for the upcoming UA entrance exam. Their father had gone out for a patrol, so it was a nice quiet for once. Until the roof collapsed in a dusty explosion. Shudo startled, staring at the rubble, and saw someone shorter than he stand up, covered in soot and dust, brushing off his hoodie. He coughed under his mask, and something red leaked from his chin. Blood, Shudo thought worriedly. The man stood up, mumbling to himself, "Goddamn flaming a-hole piece of dash." Fuyumi dropped something, because a loud clang of metal sounded throughout the house. He looked up at the 2 sheepishly through his visor and mask. Morning. You have the audacity, villain?" Endeavor's voice rang out and the man dove out of the way of a pillar of blue flame piercing the floor. Father must want this guy dead, Shudo thought. Before he knew it, the man was behind him. He pulled out a knife and took a defensive stance as Endeavor landed in the open-roofed living room. "Sorry about this, Shudo. Promise I won't hurt you," the man whispered in his ear, barely audible. The next thing he knew, there was a knife to his throat and the man had an arm wrapped around his chest. "You're gonna let me leave or Shudo gets it, old man?" Endeavor laughed at the man. He took an aggressive battle stance. "You think my Shudo can't take the brunt of a fire attack?" He launched a pillar of flame directly at them, and the man dove out of the way still holding Shudo, knife abandoned. "Jesus Christ, Todoroki, you trying to kill another kid? I thought you cared about this one." Shudo froze. He said another kid. How did the man know about Tuya? Nobody knew about Tuya. Everyone who did just assumed he died in a training accident. Not murdered by their father. Endeavor clearly didn't like that he knew, because he roared in rage and blasted another fire attack at the 2 of them. The man shot a grappling hook to the roof, and launched the 2 of them above Endeavor and back through the hole in the roof. The man pulled out a drone, and draped his flaming hoodie over it. As it flew away quickly, Endeavor launched out of the roof and chased the drone in pursuit. The man, wearing only a bit of armor and jeans, sighed and brought Shudo back to the inside of the house. God, that flaming a-hole has no FNG restraint when someone sees him off. How the hell is he still a hero dash? He looked up, realizing he still had an audience. Fuyumi was the first to speak up. "What the F just happened?" "What the F just happened?" Fuyumi asked, confusion and disbelief painted across her face. Shudo stood there, watching the boy rub the back of his neck guiltily. "Sorry for breaking the house. I'm Oracle, a vigilante who Endeavor hates because I do his job better than him." The man, Oracle, started to sway slightly, falling to his knees with a grunt. He rubbed the back of his head and hissed in pain, bringing back his hand covered in blood. "F-, The BSTRD reopened my head wound. Do either of you know how to stitch a severe laceration? Hitoshi was gonna kill him. Izuku had asked the woman to check his wound, and she hissed at the sight of his hair matted down with blood. Is it that bad? It's probably gonna need a lot of stitches we can't give you if you don't want to risk Endeavor coming back to us stitching you up. The woman, Fuyumi, said while she looked over the injury. I know he's your father, don't worry. To be honest, I know a lot of concerning things about Endeavor. Izuku trailed off, shrinking at the stares directed at him. He started to stand, speaking as he did. Anyway, Izuku started coughing, managing to get his mask off in time to let the blood come out clearly instead of splattering across the inside of his mask. He coughed into his arm, his shirt stained with blood. That wasn't a good sign, but it was something he could deal with later. He coughed up the rest of the blood onto his sleeve and placed his mask back over his mouth. I've gotta go, sorry for the roof. With that said, Izuku climbed out of the hole in the roof and made his way back to his home. It was 5 months until UA entrance exams. 5 more months to train. Every single day mattered. But yet, where was Katsuki? Walking down the street at midnight, with a picture of stupid FANG Deku, asking around to see if anybody had found his body. Sure, it was 5 months after his death-suicide, but maybe he was alive? Hey kid, what are you doing out here this late? Katsuki turned around at the gruff noise, seeing 3 people stalking up to him. One was incredibly buff, tattoos covering his muscles. The one to his left was skinny, small, and had 2 large horns sticking out of his head. To the man's right was a woman with 2 blades protruding from her elbows. 2 obvious mutation quirks, the last one probably a strength quirk. Katsuki swore to himself under his breath, he really needed to stop analyzing quirks. That was Deku's job, so why the hell didn't he just come out and do it already? Hey kid, we're talking to you. Horns shouted, and Muscles punched his palm to get Katsuki's attention. I said, give us your wallet and maybe we'll let you off with only a few minor injuries. Katsuki scoffed. Crime rates may have gone down in the past month due to Endeavor being bested by some shitty vigilante called Horacle or whatever it was, but that doesn't mean that crime rates were 0. Burn in hell, you extras. I don't have time for you. Katsuki strode off, before being punched in the back of the head. He skid across the pavement, before scrambling to get up. The skin on his knees and hands were scraped and bleeding, and he could see stars in the sides of his eyes. He looked up to the 3 who were approaching him. Give us your money or we'll do a lot worse than that, shithead. Katsuki got into a fighting position. Explosions crackled in his palms, still stinging. He grinned slightly, and that grin turned feral when he saw the man with horns step back a bit. I've been looking to unwind a bit ever since those DMN extras started to avoid me. This should be a decent outlet. Horn's face hardened at that comment, pushing past the other 2. A bully, huh? Let me at him, I'll pummel him so hard he can't walk again. Maybe I'll put him in a wheelchair if he's lucky, then he won't be able to feel the pain in his legs. Horns charged at Katsuki, who sidestepped him and exploded his gut. Horns grunted as he slid back, before charging again. This idiot keeps ducking his head and running straight at me, insisting on using his quirk, Katsuki thought. He'd do more if he just fought quirkless. Katsuki sidestepped Horns a few more times, landing a few more explosions. Horns just charged at him again, head down. Katsuki sidestepped preemptively, and Horns did a full 90-degree turn and took the explosion to the head, stabbing Katsuki in the upper leg and pinning him to the side of a wall. The man tore the embedded horn from Katsuki's leg and punched him in the gut. You ready to die, brat? Horns pulled out a knife and plunged it down on Katsuki. This is how I die, he thought. This extra with horns is gonna stab me and kill me. Katsuki tried to roll out of the way, but his leg failed him. The knife came closer, and Katsuki slammed his eyes shut, waiting for the stab. Instead of the pain though, he heard Horns scream out in pain. As he looked up, a throwing knife was in his shoulder, and 2 more in his arm. Katsuki looked up to see where they came from, and saw a man in a green hoodie. He had a visor and a black mask on, the only recognizable part of him being his piercing viridian eyes. Murder is bad, you know. That's mainly why I opt for just maiming people. which you've already done here. The man hopped down from the rooftop, landing on Horn's back and kicking him to the ground. He turned to the other two, who were backing away. Don't try to play dumb, guys. I heard and watched everything. You're under arrest. You can't arrest people, you're a vigilante. Muscles shouted indignantly. I can slap you in a twist tie and put you on the police's front step with a kind note explaining your crimes though. The man pulled out a long weapon, which Katsuki's brain supplied as a naginata because the nerd had loved them. He rushed towards Muscles, twisting out of the way of a punch at the last second and stabbing him in the thigh with the weapon. He pulled out 2 knives and used both to block the woman's elbow blades, and ducked beneath the swipe when he dropped the knives. He picked up the woman and chucked her at Muscles, who was mid-punch. Said punch connected to the woman's back, with a sickening crack as her bones broke and a scream from both when the elbow blades pierced into the man's arm and slashed through the entirety of the arms as she flew into the wall, shattering some bricks. The man knelt down in pain, grasping his arm. The vigilante walked up to the man kneeling and started to cover the bleeding wound. What the hell are you doing? He shouted at the vigilante, but made no move to stop him. You're robbing people because you need to support yourself, right? Nobody wants to hire you. A nod from Muscles. The vigilante stood up, sighed, and kicked Muscles in the nose with a sickening crunch. Bullshit, you just crave the violence. Same with the dude with the horns. The vigilante turned back to Katsuki, staring at the boy who was bleeding in several places. The vigilante chucked a cloth to him and started to zip-tie the thugs. Press that against the wound in your leg, don't let it bleed anymore. Go home, tell your mom, get to a hospital as soon as possible. I can't treat you that well. Who the hell are you? Katsuki shouted, making no move to do any of those. The man sighed and looked at Katsuki. Viridian eyes piercing his red. Katsuki knew that look. Bitter contempt. He had seen it in the teacher's eyes when looking at Deku. So why the hell was this random criminal looking down on him? It wasn't like he had done more than him. Oracle. Katsuki stood corrected. This man had done more than him. Oracle had gone toe-to-toe with Endeavor and made it out a free man, with minor injuries allegedly. He was better than most pro-heroes, despite only being on the scene for 2 months. Which means... Wait, Oracle. Katsuki chased the man, and before he could get within 10 feet of the vigilante, he was pinned to a brick wall by a grappling hook. What? I need to ask you something. Katsuki pulled out the picture of Deku and held it up to Oracle. Have you seen this kid anywhere? Please, I've been looking everywhere for him. He killed himself 5 months ago. Oracle turned away, leaving Katsuki slumped against the brick wall with the absence of the cable pinning him there. Oracle stopped walking away and started talking over his shoulder. I don't know why you care, he just followed your advice. You think I don't regret saying that? If you're so all-seeing, then why the F don't you realize? I'm out here looking for the nerd because I miss him. You miss your punching bag. Oracle started angrily, before Katsuki cut him off. I miss my childhood friend. Katsuki bellowed at the man, who was taken aback slightly. I miss my childhood friend who said we'd become heroes together, my friend who was always pestering me about my quirk, my friend who wanted to be a hero. I miss the DMN nerd, okay? Katsuki didn't realize when his voice had gone hoarse, when tears started coming out of his eyes. I miss the one kid who tried to teach me how to act in the sea of assholes who hated him. The kid who tried his best to set me on the right path. Sure he failed, and sure he was annoying, but I cared for him, damn it. He was like a brother to me. Then why'd you tell him to kill himself? Oracle shouted, turning back to Katsuki. His viridian eyes were burning with rage, with intent to hurt. Were those what Katsuki's eyes looked like all those months ago when Deku was still alive? Why'd you beat him to the point of depression? Why'd you beat him to the point of suicide? He wouldn't break. Katsuki shouted back, explosions popping in his bloody hands. The BSTRD would always get back up, no matter what. I just Katsuki took in a shaky breath. I know what I did was effed up, and I don't deserve to get off scot-free for it. Which is why I'm trying to help people now. I want to become a hero, not to be the best, but to save people. You said he wouldn't break, but didn't he do just that? He broke on a rooftop, when All Might told him he couldn't be a hero. He broke far before that though. He broke when he was told he was quirkless. Oracle walked up to Katsuki and shoved a finger into his chest, pushing him back slightly. When someone breaks, it's like a glass. It doesn't always shatter, Bakugou. It cracks over and over and over again, until it can't bear its own weight and shatters from inside out. That's what you did to Izuku. You beat the glass over and over again, because it wouldn't explode into glassy shards for your own amusement to put them back together. Izuku broke. Time and time again. You're just too blind to see it. Oracle walked away, before stopping once more. Even still, I'm sure if he were still alive he'd forgive you. Oracle chuckled. Unfortunately, Izuku is dead. Oracle left the alley, dragging 3 criminals behind him, leaving Katsuki to sit in the alley alone for a while. After a bit he went home, leg bleeding through the cloth provided. He had a lot to think about. Detective Tsukachi speaking. Naomasa wasn't sure what he was expecting when his personal phone was called 4 times by a random number, but it couldn't have been good. He was right. Naomasa, good to talk to you. Listen, look outside your window. Naomasa sighed. The new vigilante, Oracle, was standing outside his window, a phone to his ear. Naomasa opened the window, and Oracle handed him a USB drive. Here you go, evidence that the guys out front did this to themselves. Thanks, Oracle. Naomasa turned back to his computer, downing the rest of his coffee. Just what he needed. More goddamn paperwork. DMN, lie detector, bad night? Oracle jumped through the window, another cup of coffee in his hand. Naomasa thanked him as he handed it to the tired detective, and sighed. Yeah, bad night. This case is a huge goddamn headache, along with yours. Yeah, well, what can I say? I'm determined. Determined, maybe. Impossible to find anything on? Definitely. Seriously, how the hell do you get away with all this shit? Is it your quirk? Naomasa watched the Viridian eyes blink slowly, meet his for a second, then Oracle started to lose his sheet. Oh my god, you think it's my quirk? Oracle laughed hysterically as he talked. Eventually he calmed down enough to talk. No, it is not my quirk, Naomasa. The detective stared at Oracle confused. What the hell is your quirk then? Naomasa pinched the bridge of his nose, fighting off a headache. You'll never know. Thanks, quirk, Naomasa grumpily thought. Way to believe in me. Fine. Anyway, any intention of becoming a pro instead? You have the skill and recommendations from me and Eraser. Oracle slouched back against a wall, sighing. Nah, I can't become a pro. Save the license for someone who can. They sat in silence for a moment, before Naomasa spoke up. Is that why you became a vigilante? You couldn't be a pro. Oracle laughed at him sharply. No, I became a vigilante because this world beat me down again and again. I decided to fight back. Just be glad I'm not a villain. Naomasa shivered at the thought. Oracle could probably take on several pros, and was smarter than most professional analysts due to what some assumed was his quirk. Oracle stood up after a minute, and climbed out the window. The 3 are out front, they need some medical care. See ya, Naomasa. Naomasa secretly wondered what the vigilante would do next, and part of him hoped for his next move. He was good at what he did. Hitoshi, I'm going through with the plan. Izuku Fengihel, please tell me you're joking. I swear to God if I check the news tonight and I see what I think I'll see, I will kill you. First endeavor now this. See you tonight. You piece of he's gone. How the F has he gone this long as a vigilante? Hitoshi face-bombed, before going back to his weights. I hate my goddamn roommates so much, he sighed. Shoyuta walked into the interrogation room. It was 2 weeks since Tsukachi was ambushed in his office by Oracle, and the vigilante had been quiet ever since. Until earlier this morning, when the problem child got his arms snapped in 2 by Death Arms after picking a fight with him. To be fair, Death Arms was ordered to capture the kid, but still. Excessive force, much? Shoyuta sat down across from Oracle, whose arm was in a cast. The hospital says I can't run with this thing on. Can you get recovery girl so I can make a sound escape? Oracle mentioned as he sat down. Like he was asking for water. Show you decide. This was either going to be the longest interrogation of his life, or the shortest one. Tsukachi came in and sat down next to Shoyuta. Oracle, we're going to ask you a few questions. I need you to answer honestly. The detective pulled out his clipboard and began questioning. Please state your name for the legal record. Oracle. Your real name. Absol. Absol? Shoyuta deadpanned. Absolutely not telling you. Next. Oracle asked, fiddling with his cuffs. These are some pretty sweet cuffs, huh? If you use your quirk in these, then it forces the energy back on you, right? Say, for example, a kid with a fire quirk had them on. And that fire quirk made them shoot fire. They would feel the flames burning them if they tried to use their quirk. It also works with mutations. If you have an extra arm mutation, if you try to use that arm, you get immense pains in the muscles. Correct. You know a lot of stuff, kid. That stuff is true, so why don't we trade that information? You know that, so tell us. What is your quirk? Tsukachi leaned forward as he asked this, staring deep into Oracle's viridian eyes. Oracle thought for a second, then leaned forward. Their faces were about 4 inches apart before Oracle spoke. Sorry, can't tell you. He headbutted the detective, sending the man reeling back in pain. Shoyuta stood up, but by the time he could ready his scarf, the interrogation room door had already swung open and Oracle was making his escape. That kid was 2DMN fast. Shoyuta instead elected to help the detective up. You okay, Tsukachi? The detective nodded, rubbing the blood from his nose. He only headbutted me enough to startle me, and cause my nose to start bleeding slightly. I'm fine, the hit was calculated. In fact, everything he just did was... His legs were cuffed to the table. When the hell did he uncuff his legs from the table? Tsukachi massaged his temples. His quirk clearly isn't analysis, unless he's ridiculously smart without it. It could be a speed quirk, maybe a strength manipulation. Shoyuta put a hand to his forehead. He didn't take off the quirk suppressant cuffs though, so I don't think he used it just now. This kid is making my head hurt. He escaped an interrogation room with a broken arm and several bruises. It had taken insane pain tolerance in order to run with the state his arm's in, and there's no way he doesn't have a plan to escape the cops. He planned this whole thing out, except maybe Death Arms snapping his arm. Naomasa brushed his jacket off before continuing. But there's one thing he said that bothered me. What part? Shoyuta asked, eyebrow quirked up in curiosity. He said he couldn't tell us what his quirk is. Yeah? What of it? That registered as true for my quirk. Izuku woke up at 3 in the morning to his phone ringing. He checked it, to see the contact Detective 33rd President of the United States. Izuku picked up the phone, rubbing his eyes. He placed his mask over his mouth and activated the voice changer. Damn it, Naomasa, I just finished patrol. What do you want? You want to help with a drag bust? Izuku instantly sat up, putting on his vigilante gear, holding the phone between his ear and shoulder as he grabbed a notepad. Do I ever? Oh, Naomasa, you know me so well. What drag is it? Izuku quickly scratched out a note for Hitoshi that said, going to do a drag bust, will be back by 6, and ran out of the abandoned building. Who else is there? How many pros? What gang are we dealing with? We're dealing with a warehouse full of trigger that's being transported in half an hour. Just got an anonymous tip an hour ago, and we have 10 pros on site along with about 100 cops. I thought you'd want to help. I just sent the location along with the villains we're expecting. A text notification with a location about 35 minutes away on foot. I'm gonna be 5 minutes late at worst, 5 early at best. Don't wait for me. Now, what pros are there? We have Eraserhead, Midnight, Present Mike, Ectoplasm, Sir Knight A, Kamui Woods, Nedzu overcomes with me, Death Arms Dash. Izuku winced at the mention of the hero. His arm still hurt from being snapped. Thank God it was a clean break, Izuku and Hitoshi both thought, so he wasn't planning on doing too much fighting. Still, who could resist a drag bust? Izuku was giddy at the thought of it, returning his attention to the detective over the phone. Mount Lady and Backdraft are here for the perimeter. Now we have you, so that makes 11. Izuku let out a sharp huff of breath that could be constituted as a laugh. Naomasa, I can't be a hero. We both know this. Naomasa let out a sigh from the other side. Kid, just accept it. You're a genius and a great vigilante. We'd love it if you joined our side legally. You have both mine and Eraser's endorsement. Yeah, you don't know me, Naomasa. If you did, you'd instantly regret inviting me and turn me down. See you at the raid. Izuku hung up and started to move faster. He could barely wait for his first drag bust. Naomasa sighed as he put his phone in his pocket. From behind him, he heard a familiar voice. Who are you talking to, detective? Naomasa turned around to see Nezu walk in, sitting next to him and watching the cameras along with the detective. Remember that vigilante me and Eraser have been having so much trouble with? Oracle? But of course, how could I not? He seems intriguing and Aizawa notices it too. The principal took a sip from his tea, which he produced from his pocket. How did he get that? Did he have a full teacup in his pocket? Naomasa thought before dismissing the thought and returning to the cameras. Yeah, just invited him to the drag bus dash. Interesting and unconventional, I like it. Nezu commented, before letting Naomasa continue. And I asked again if he wanted a license and he said no. That kid's a mystery, I swear to God. I asked him what his quirk was, and he said, sorry, can't tell you, and then broke out of an interrogation room with quirk suppressant still on. The weirdest part was that all of that was true. Nezu hummed in acknowledgement before speaking up. You think he's being threatened not to tell you, or that he physically cannot tell you? That's the rough part, I don't know myself. He was also sorry about it, truly sorry. Which just raises even more questions. Is his quirk too dangerous? Does he not like it? Is he being threatened into not telling, or worse, not using it? It's just dash, Naomasa sighed and took a sip of the tea he unknowingly had in his hand. That's good, he thought. This kid's a ball of mysteries, and every time I think I have an answer, 2 more questions come up that are just as weird. Like a hydra of riddles. This will be an interesting character to study. Nezu sipped his tea as Naomasa looked at him like he just said hell froze over. You're gonna help the case? I'm afraid that my reasons are more selfish than arresting him. I want to play him in chess. Nezu was startled out of his sip of tea by Naomasa's phone ringing. Hello. Put it on speaker, Detective Polygraph. Oracle's voice shouted in his ear, giddy. As soon as he did, the vigilante continued. Hi, Nezu, sir. First off, I'm honored. I'm being praised from the most intelligent being on this planet, and in the coolest comparison ever. Never did I think that little old me would be called the Hydra of Riddles, because honestly that is a kick-ass name and it is way cooler than Oracle. Hold on a sec. Naomasa and Nezu looked at each other, eyebrows raised as scuffle on the other side of the phone kicked up, and they heard someone shout in pain. Sorry, some dude tried to mug me. Don't have time to arrest him, so I'm just gonna leave him here knocked out. His wounds aren't bad, just a few cuts and bruises. Anyway, Nezu, I'm honored and would be glad to play chess with you one day. I'll be there in 4 minutes. Tell Death Arms not to kill me on sight. Is he always like this? Nezu asked as Naomasa pinched the bridge of his nose at the vigilante. Nervous, no. Migraine-inducing, this. Chaotic, definitely. I like him already. Shoyuta tapped his foot. 3 minutes until the raid. 3 minutes until they could bust in there. He just wanted to get this over with and go home, if he was being honest. The earpiece in their ears giving them all updates suddenly picked up, and they heard Tsukachi's voice in their ears. When you see Oracle, don't arrest him. He's coming to help with the raid. Several pros looked at each other confused, Shoyuta sighed, and Death Arms groaned loudly. Really, that twerp? What help is he gonna be? I snapped his arm last week. Shoyuta went stiff as he wheeled around to the other hero. Don't insult him, Death Arms. He'd be a great hero if he wasn't so damn stubborn. What did you do to him? Nemuri asked, concern laced in her voice. I snapped his arm, I was supposed to catch him. Did better than you after all. He gestured to Shoyuta as he said that, and sat down roughly. That kid kept taunting me until I landed a punch on me, then he told me where I lived. That isn't even public knowledge. He's trouble, nothing more and nothing less. Shoyuta grabbed Death Arms by the shoulder. You touch that kid again and I'll break a whole lot more than your arm. I know for a fact that kid would have kicked your butt if he wanted to, you're lucky he isn't a villain. You'd be dead before you could hit the ground if you were. Don't sheet talk the kid. Shoyuta stormed back to where Namuri and Hizashi were standing, and the group of 9 pros were silent. After a bit, Hizashi elbowed him in the gut lightly. How long until we adopt him? Whispered into Shuta's ear, making Namuri snort with laughter as Shoyuta hid his slightly red face in his capture scarf. We're not adopting a vigilante. He hissed back, making Hizashi hold back laughter. You already have in spirit though. Just a matter of time until we sign the adoption papers. He was cut off by Shoyuta shoving him lightly, the blonde laughing slightly. Namuri was cackling like a witch behind them. Before anyone could say anything else, they were cut off by a familiar voice. Damn it, Hizashi, stop trying to get Dad to adopt me. Anyway, who's ready for my first drag bust? With those last 2 words, Oracle put his hands up and did jazz hands. Problem child, I hate you. Shoyuta deadpanned. And I hate having to wake up half an hour after my patrol, with a still healing broken arm, just to go on a raid. The only reason I'm here is because it's my first ever drag bust. He did jazz hands with the words, drag bust, again. You need better humor. Shoyuta deadpanned. You need to get your sheet together and learn how to not expel the whole class, cause if my recommendation student gets expelled then I will expel you from the realm of the living, Shoyuta. Can't do that if you don't tell me who they are. Shoyuta replied, standing up. The raid was set to begin any minute now. That's your job, Dad. Oracle walked up, took a look at the warehouse and walked towards it. Before anyone could speak up, Nedzu's voice came over the comms. Tell Oracle the plan to deal with the Shy Hasaikai. Hitoshi woke up at 4 in the morning and walked into the kitchen. On the table was a note that said, going to do a drag bust, will be back by 6. All of Izuku's vigilante gear was gone. Hitoshi sighed and picked up his weights. In the back of his mind, he wondered how many wounds he'd have to help patch up. Izuku strolled into the warehouse confidently, where several people were loading cases into a truck. It took all of Izuku's self-control not to beat the sheet out of everyone here, but he was close. As he walked closer to the middle, several guns loaded and were pointed at him. A tall, strong man wearing a white mask with crystals coming out of his body walked up to him. Your Oracle. What are you doing here? Izuku recognized him as someone from the 8 bullets of the Shy Hasaikai. He slowly put his hands in the air. What does it look like? I got an anonymous tip and I wanted to grab some trigger. Sheet's useful for my quirk. The man stared at him for a moment, before raising his hand. All the guns pointed at him simultaneously went down, and Izuku internally sighed. Step 1 was a success. So, can I buy some? Before we sell it, we need to vet your quirk. Make sure nothing bad will happen when you take it. The crystal man led Izuku to the side of a truck, and he patted it twice. It drove off, quickly speeding beneath the underpass that the heroes were waiting on. Could you tell us your quirk so we can dash? They were interrupted by a large crash, and everyone looked at the truck that was being held up by the bumper by Death Arms. Most people screamed and ran mindlessly, some hid, and a fair few, including Crystal Dude and his lackeys, ran into a long corridor. Izuku chased the ones going down the hall, as a few pros cleared out the main warehouse. The crystal man looked behind him, and upon seeing Izuku, threw one of his underlings at the boy. Izuku tripped over the man, who was laying on the floor. I knew something was up, you vigilante piece of shit. Crystal man shouted behind his back. Izuku swore and launched a hook towards the man, latching onto one of his underlings who stayed back to fight him. Izuku flung forward, dodging the left hook and tripping the man. He pinned the man down, stabbed him in the hand for good measure, and shot another hook after crystals. It wrapped around his arm and he skidded to a stop, as Izuku flew towards him and flipped crystals over his shoulder. The man rolled out of the slam and threw a punch at Izuku. Izuku dodged backwards, but crystals shot out of the man's fist and hit him hard in the ribs. He sprinted further down the hall, Izuku close in pursuit. Mimic, emergency extract, the man shouted into his mask. Izuku launched his hook out again, wrapping around the man's neck and pulling him to the ground. He punched Izuku in the jaw, damaging the mask he was wearing and giving him a bloody nose. Ectoplasm rushed past him, along with 2 clones, and knelt down at the man. Izuku started to tie him up with a zip tie. "You Hojo, you're under arrest for dealing trigger and working for the Shai Hasaikai." Ectoplasm's clone was securing the zip tie next to Izuku as moonlight shone down on them. Suddenly, it cut off. Izuku looked up to the window and saw 2 intense eyes staring back at him from outside the window. The person outside suddenly disappeared, and Izuku dove back away from the man. Just as he kicked off, the floor opened up into a large hole, dropping the man and one of Ectoplasm's clones through 5 feet of pure concrete, into an underground tunnel. Just as abruptly as it had opened, it was closed. Izuku stumbled to the floor, heart racing as a gunshot was heard from beneath them. "My clone is dead, Eraser." Oracle was able to get out in time, but he was hit in the ribs. He may have a fractured rib. Izuku could barely hear them, like he was underwater. He almost died. He almost died and he wouldn't get to say goodbye to anyone, and the last thing he said to Hitoshi was, "Good morning." He nearly lost everything again. He couldn't do anything about it. He would have died. Instantly. He could feel a panic attack coming on. He needed to get out of here, he needed to go somewhere else, he needed to get away from the pros. "Are you okay?" Izuku didn't know who said it. All he knew is that it sounded like his teachers, mockingly asking if he was okay. He could almost hear Bakugou there, calling him a quirkless freak, a Deku useless. That's why when someone grabbed his wrist, he freaked out so hard. He stabbed them in the arm and shot a grappling hook out the window, flying through the shattered glass and into the city. Shudo couldn't sleep. He was attending a business trip with his father, and they were attending a pro-hero gala the next day. He knew he needed sleep. The logical part of his brain knew that his father would not have any of it if he fell asleep at the gala, and sitting on the roof at 4 a.m. was not helping his sleep schedule. But he couldn't stop thinking about the vigilante that had quite literally burst into his life through the roof. He knew he should have been focusing on getting into UA, but that random person had somehow figured out that Endeavor was abusive and was taking action against the man. He really should try to sleep though. Shudo turned around to walk down from the roof when he heard feet land on the concrete of the roof. Shudo stilled, door open in one hand. He could hear the person breathing from here, heavy and distorted breathing, like it was going through a broken voice changer. At the lack of action from the mystery person, he slowly turned around. He saw a familiar figure in a green hoodie leaning over the railing of the building, looking down at traffic below. Oracle. He turned around, eyes wide, and slumped against the railing in an upright fetal position. Shudo could see the man trembling from over here. The man who went up against Endeavor and made it out a free man was trembling. "Are you all right, Oracle?" "It's hot, too hot. It burns so much. Please stop." He devolved into a distorted mumbling storm, rubbing his wrists. Shudo walked up and knelt down, rapidly decreasing the temperature around them. After a bit, Oracle stopped trembling from fear and more from the cold. "Shudo?" His voice was young, and Shudo realized that his mask had probably stopped working from wherever he just came from before this. "Hey, it's okay. I won't hurt you." He approached slowly, making his movements slow enough to be seen and easily reacted to. Finally, he hugged Oracle and patted him on the back. "It's all right, you're safe here." Oracle chuckled to himself shakily. "I am glad I ran into you. You're probably the one person who also knows what it's like to be hurt by those who should care about us." Shudo hummed in agreement, before asking the question that had been on his mind for so long. "Are you okay?" Oracle gave a shaky, distorted laugh. "No. I'm sorry you have to see me like this. You don't have to carry the world on your shoulders, Oracle. You can come to me for help if you need it." Something flashed across Oracle's face as he ducked his head. Thanks, Shudo," he squeaked out. "I'm gonna go before the H-Heroes find me." Thanks." With that, Oracle broke from the hug and vaulted over the railing. He was an odd guy. "Hey Oracle, what's up?" Hitoshi asked through the phone. He had gotten a random call at 4:15 a.m. from Izuku, and he didn't want to assume the worst, but holy shit Toshi, how the F am I so gay? You saw Todoroki again? He hugged me Toshi. Oh my god, I'm too gay for this shit. I'll see you in a bit. He hung up immediately after he finished. Hitoshi sighed. How the hell had he gotten into this? Mei was working in the lab at 4M, coming up with blueprints for the UA entrance exam in a month. She was about to pack up when the window opened and her favorite vigilante, Robert-kun, rolled onto the floor of the lab. He brushed his hoodie off and pulled out a few sheets of paper. "Mei, could you make all this gear by next month? I've done the blueprints, I just need you to build it. I also want you to make more of these cuffs." Robert-kun dropped the blueprints on a table along with a pair of thick, bright yellow cuffs, and Mei quickly looked them over. Her eyes widened from reading over the more meticulous parts of the blueprints. Was he expecting to get hit by a freight train while wearing this thing? The armor was enough to probably let someone survive All Might's full power punch with only a few broken bones. The entire hoodie was made from a fiberglass fabric, and the visor connected to a type of tablet sewn into his left sleeve that he could do some tap-pity-tap bullshit to hack something. The visor also had a holographic breakdown of any person he saw, and the grappling hooks were on gyroscopic orbs so they could fire at any angle. He also had a few knives, discs, and some other weird gizmos that Mei couldn't fathom why they would be needed. I can do it in a week if these blueprints are accurate. Mei made a few small changes to the blueprints, like writing Oracle on the front of the hoodie and hoodie on the back, notes for later, so she remembered to put that on the hoodie. "So, you don't need to pay me in anything more than parts one don't have." Mei could see the gears behind Robert-kun's eyes churning at that statement, before he stuttered out after a few seconds, "Why don't want payment?" "Nope. Being able to make such intricate babies is a reward in itself. I may also use the high-protection low-density fabric idea for my UA entrance exam, and maybe turn in some modified blueprints of these. You've paid me in ideas, Robert-kun. You have the biggest brain of anyone else I've ever met, and your analysis is genius." Mei gave a thumbs up before bringing the blueprints to the table. Robert-kun was oddly silent after that speech, until he finally spoke up. "Izuku." Mei turned around, looking at Robert-kun, who had a smile in his eyes as he looked at Mei. "My name. It's Izuku Midoriya." Mei looked at him, whose happy expression turned resigned. "The reason I didn't tell you is because I'm legally dead, and nobody's supposed to know I'm alive. It could screw me over big time." They stood in silence, before Mei broke the silence. "So, how'd you die?" Izuku stared at her, and started to laugh lightly. It was the first time Mei heard the man laugh. He took off his mask to reveal a kid, about her age, with a radiating smile that seemed to brighten up the room. "Well Mei, it's a long story. It all started from the age of 4. Robert-kun. I finished the hoodie and the gloves, now all I need to do are the knives, swords, and other fun gizmos." Izuku sighed into his phone after hearing Mei's report. She called him in the middle of his training with Hitoshi, so he was currently fighting Hitoshi with a phone pressed between his shoulder and head. He sidestepped a punch and brought his knee hard into Hitoshi's stomach. "Mei, I told you this. It's a bullet target, not a gizmo. It's so that the special bullets you're making just track to the targets, so I don't have to aim as much." Izuku whined, dodging a few more punches. He rolled under Hitoshi and popped up behind him, kicking him to the ground. He held Hitoshi down, and the purple-haired boy sighed. "Is that sheet like your signature move? Just rolling underneath someone and hitting them in the back?" Izuku laughed at the boy's reaction. "Yep." Realization dawned on him as he recognized his mistake. "Wait, no dash." His mind was filled with fog. It was dismissed as soon as it came. Ugh, fine. You win that one." Robert-kun, still here. Does Tired-kun need any support gear for the entrance exam that he needs? Mei sounded excited at the opportunity to build more things. "No Mei, he's fine. His costume, however, well, I think he knows who to go to for support gear." Hitoshi gave him a half-hearted look of mock fear, before standing up and grabbing a water bottle while Izuku finished his call. Oh, but of course. Tired, Kun? Do you want knives? Guns? Cannons? Grenades dash. May no. No grenades. And Hitoshi doesn't get guns or knives, he isn't sophisticated enough yet. Izuku said in a fake distinguished voice. I want cat paws with retractable knife claws. Hitoshi deadpanned, causing Mei and Izuku to start cackling. I'm making that for your costume. You can't stop me. Mei shouted from the phone. Mei, no, that's the wild pussycat's gimmick. You can't just steal that. Izuku shouted indignantly, to be met with laughing from Hitoshi and evil cackling from Mei. I can and I will. Copyright laws never stopped me before, why should they stop me now? Mei. That's all. She hung up on me. Izuku stuffed the phone in his pocket with a huff. She hung up on me, and now she's gonna make you knife cat paws. Why'd you spur her on to do this, Hitoshi? I need an answer. I want it in my costume. Hitoshi answered simply. Izuku sighed, face-palming. Why am I friends with you? Kurogyari warped back into the bar with Jiren to find Tamura Shigaraki sitting at one of the stools. Sensei had requested Jiren for a job, presumably one relating to the raid on UA they would be performing within the next few weeks. Jiren sat down, picking up and drinking a shot of whiskey that had been poured before Kurogyari left. The broker placed the shot glass down and lit a cigar. So, what does a group backed by the boogeyman of the underground need little old me for? I need you to get me as many criminals as possible. People who are seeking violence. Doesn't matter how powerful their quirks are. We just need quantity. I have the quality covered. Kurogyari has heard Sensei's voice over and over again, and yet it's still off-putting. It makes him feel fear. Like he's going to be hurt. It's a very primal reaction, and an illogical one at that. Sensei would never hurt him, due to his value and dedication to young Tamura. Yet still, that voice shakes him to the core for a reason he has yet to figure out. You've come to the right man then. How soon do you need it? As soon as possible. I am sending Tamura into UA on the 3rd day in order to get lesson plans. That should give us the time when All Might is separated from the rest of the school. When that happens, we strike. You can count on me all for one, Jiren said as he took another puff of his cigar. Kurogyari opened a portal back to his house, and the broker walked through it casually. After all, he had work to do. Inko had originally gone into protection out of desperation that Izuku was still alive. She could still work, still maintain her social life, but she had a hero or officer watch her at all times whenever she went out. Today, she was going to the Bakugou household to wish their son good luck on the entrance exam that was up and coming. The officer nodded as they got to the door, and Inko knocked. Mitsuki opened the door, brightening up at Inko's shaky smile. Inko. Glad to see you could make it. Inko nodded, walking in and taking her shoes off. Mitsuki left to go finish making dinner. Masaru was helping her out, and Katsuki was nowhere to be seen. She went to walk into the kitchen, before a hand was placed on her wrist from behind her. Auntie, do you think we could talk? Katsuki stood there, a serious look on his face. Inko nodded and let the boy lead her to his room, where he shut the door and sat down on his bed with a sigh. So, what did you want to talk about? Inko started worriedly. It hurt her to see her child's best friend in such a state. I'm so effing sorry. I'm the reason he's dead. Auntie, I'm a terrible person. Tears started to pour down his face as he shook violently. Inko stood there in disbelief. I broke him, Auntie. I thought he couldn't break and I beat him down again and again, and those BStas encouraged me all because I have a heroic quirk. Explosions started to pop in his hands, and he hung his head. His lap was stained with tears, and Inko took in the state of the room. It looked like it hadn't been cleaned in months. There were scorch marks on the walls. A framed photo of Katsuki and Izuku, 4 years old, smiling brightly in front of a limited edition All Might figure was the only thing that was left untouched. It was a horrible parallel to what her room looked like at the place she was staying. She couldn't find anything to say. The last time I saw him was when I told him to kill himself. I'm the reason he's dead, Auntie. I killed him. I'm a terrible person. I shouldn't be allowed to be a hero. Katsuki gripped his thighs with more vigor than seemingly possible, and Inko heard pops from her palms. Her eyes widened when she realized what was happening, and she quickly strode forward and wrenched Katsuki's hands from his thighs. On his upper leg was what looked like a stab wound from months ago. The jeans he was wearing were burnt through, and he had slightly singed his skin. I'm pathetic, he mumbled. Katsuki, calm down, Inko begged. God, she was so pathetic. Begging the kid who apparently suicide baited her son to stop hurting himself because she couldn't stop her son from hurting anymore. The boy to stop. You aren't thinking straight, it's okay. Are you saying I didn't do that shit, auntie? Do you fucking forgive me? Katsuki stood up, wobbling slightly as tears streamed down his face. Of course I don't think you didn't do that, and of course I don't forgive you. Inko said sternly, and Katsuki stilled. But I know you aren't fully responsible. That entire DMN school is the most at fault for pushing you to do that. You're a victim too, just nowhere near as much as Izuku was. He wanted to go to UA, you know. Katsuki gave a bitter laugh after a PRGNT silence. The nerd probably could have gotten in if I'm being honest. He was training ever since he was told he was quirkless, wanting every advantage he could get. He could probably deadlift a car if he needed to. You said he wanted to go to UA, right? Inko asked sternly. Yeah, he deserved a place more than me if I'm being honest. Katsuki dropped down onto the bed roughly. It's weird, you never realize how good someone is until they aren't there anymore. He would have been the first quirkless hero. Go to UA in his stead, Inko decided. You go to that entrance exam, and you kick its butt, and you become the best DMN hero. Not for yourself, but for Izuku. Katsuki's eyes widened, and huffed out a sharp breath that could count as a laugh. Of course, auntie. Inko nodded and went to walk out. Before she could leave, she was interrupted by Katsuki again. Also, auntie? I'm sorry. If I could take it back, I would. Don't apologize with your words, Katsuki. Apologize with your actions. I hope that one day I can forgive you for what you did. Inko left the room and walked downstairs, leaving Katsuki to change into new pants and consider their talk. Here Hitoshi was. The entrance exam. His dream was right in front of him. His one-way ticket to the hero course. He was running on a rare 8 hours of sleep, and felt like he was on cloud 9. He was ready to become a hero, and nothing would stop him. Hey dude, I lost my phone number, can I have yours? Hitoshi turned at the admittedly terrible pickup line to see a blond boy smiling brightly. He had a black lightning bolt pattern in his hair, and was wearing a black choker with a white t-shirt. Hitoshi was so caught up in looking at the boy that he didn't even realize he was still walking until he tripped. He fell backwards, before the blonde's hand jolted out to grab him by the hem of his shirt. His cheeks were dusted slightly pink as he smiled cheerfully. Sheet, dude, I only meant to sweep you off your feet figuratively, not literally. My bad. It's fine, Hitoshi mumbled, embarrassed. So much for nothing stopping him. Might as well try to be friendly then. I'm Shinso Hitoshi. What's your name? My first name's Denki, but I forgot my last name. Could I have yours? The boy, Denki, said cheerfully. Hitoshi raised an eyebrow, smirking slightly at the attempts to flirt. After a moment of silence, he gave a dramatic sigh. Alas, I've been rejected again. Maybe next time I'll be able to get someone half as beautiful as you. Are you just gonna leave me hanging by my shirt and keep flirting with me, 'cause I've kinda got a hero exam to take? Hitoshi said awkwardly. Denki's eyes widened and he pulled the boy back to his feet and dragged him along by his bicep. That starts in like 5 minutes. Crap, we've gotta hurry. Hitoshi willingly let himself be dragged along by the cute boy. Shut the hell up, brain. You have an exam to take, stop being gay, he thought to himself silently, and up to the exam room. Denki whispered, good luck, to him as they sat down, and the exams were handed out. After about an hour and a half, he finished and handed the exam to the proctor. The exam was, relatively speaking, decently easy. Compared to the sheet Izuku would mumble to himself when drawing up blueprints, It felt like explaining the theory of why the toaster was called a toaster. Easy stuff. Probably. Unless it all went over his head. Hitoshi promptly spent the next hour and a half worrying about how he did on the written exam, as everyone else's tests slowly trickled in. After that, they went to an area where present Mike, who explained the physical test. They all got changed into workout clothes. Some dude with blonde spiky hair was asked why he had a stab wound, and said dude shouted at the kid who asked about minding his own business. Hitoshi couldn't help but silently agree as he slipped on a t-shirt, unbothered by the chills of February. The group assigned to Ground Delta went up to the starting line, waiting for the signal to go. Present Mike shouted over the microphone, "Go!" and Hitoshi was off without looking back. From the beginning, he could hear Present Mike saying, "What, you think there's gonna be a countdown in real life? Newsflash kiddos, there's not." Hitoshi only needed to kill a sheet ton of robots. With a non-physical quirk. With only the clothes on his back. This sheet is so biased, Hitoshi sighed internally as he ran towards the first robot. Biased or not, he would pass the exam. Will become a hero. 5 minutes into the exam. 5 minutes remaining. Hitoshi had 26 points and he felt like he could collapse any minute now. He had to keep going though. He couldn't give up. He ran up to a 2-pointer, about to stab a large chunk of scrap metal into the front of it, before it was destroyed by a large explosion produced by a kid. Said kid left as soon as the robot was destroyed, looking after more prey. Hitoshi sighed to himself, looking for more robots. At one point he saw the blonde boy who was flirting with him electrocute an entire robot and shoot finger guns at him. He ran around the false city, eventually coming up to a kid facing off against 3 different 3-point robots. He was clearly outmatched. The kid was laying on the ground, about to pass out. One of the 3-pointers approached the kid, and Hitoshi sprinted. He kicked off the side of a building, landing on top of the 3-pointer, and dug the sharp scrap metal he had in his hands into the robot, destroying it. He leapt from one robot carcass to the next, killing them as he went. After all 3 robots were destroyed, Hitoshi ran off to search for more prey. 35 points, and a few minutes left, he thought. After running around a bit longer, he came out to a main road to be immediately clotheslined by some random kid sprinting the other way. The kid didn't even say anything as he scrambled up and ran away. Hitoshi turned around and saw the source of the fear, being a gargantuan robot that towered above the buildings. The 0-pointer. Hitoshi was about to run before he saw movement by some rubble. He squinted closer to see a boy with black hair and rounded elbows stuck underneath some rubble. The 0-pointer was about a minute away from him at the speed it was walking at. Hitoshi dashed towards the kid, hoping to think of a plan before the 0-pointer crushed him. As he arrived, he knelt next to the kid. "Hey kid, can you get out?" Hitoshi tried lifting the rock, but it was too heavy. "Nah dude, it fell and broke my leg. Just run, I'll be fine." The kid shot him a strained smile, and Hitoshi shook his head. "No can do. What's your quirk?" "My elbows are tape dispensers," the kid said. Hitoshi had a plan forming in his head. Whether it would work was a totally different question. "Alright, I need about 100 feet of tape as soon as possible." The other kid nodded at the order and started to shoot out tape rapidly. Hitoshi grabbed a relatively heavy rock and started to tie the tape around it. "Okay, just sit tight. I've got this." Hitoshi got the bundled tape wrapped around his arm like a rope and threw the rock up to the 0-pointer. It managed to wrap around one of the arms, and Hitoshi started to rapidly climb the tape. When he finally got to the top of the 0-pointer, it looked like it was about 15 seconds from crushing the tape boy. Now if only he could think of a plan within the next 15 seconds to stop this thing. The wind whipped through his hair as he thought. How the hell do I take down a skyscraper-sized robot with nothing but a sharp piece of metal? He looked to the ground and saw the familiar blonde boy standing, staring at him wide-eyed. He got an idea. "Denki!" he shouted at the top of his lungs. The blonde startled slightly, and Hitoshi took that as a sign he could hear him. "I need you to electrocute the wire I send down with as much force as possible." Hitoshi turned around and grabbed the metal plate in his hands, and slammed the sharp side down as hard as possible into the roof of the machine. He grabbed a wire and threw it down, the wire tumbling down and landing about 5 feet above the ground. They only had a few seconds before the tape kid was crushed. They wouldn't make it. The blonde jumped off a pile of rubble, grabbed the wire, and sent as much electricity through it as he could muster. Hitoshi barely had enough time to get away from the exposed circuitry before electricity was sent barreling through the wires, narrowly avoiding an explosion from inside the robot. It stilled, and Hitoshi let out a sigh. He slowly slid down the tape, noting the blonde boy looking like his mind was fried, which why was Hitoshi thinking about how that was kinda cute what the F, brain, and went over to the boy with the tape quirk. He knelt down at the boy's side, who gave him a shaky smile. "Hey dude, you okay?" Hitoshi asked the boy. "Pretty sure my leg is broken and I won't pass the exam, but other than that I'm dandy. How are you?" "Running solely on adrenaline. I'll try and help you out now that impending doom isn't marching towards us." Hitoshi tried to lift the cement block, but to no success. "Okay, maybe when the exam is over one of the dash." Hitoshi's sentence was interrupted by Present Mic's voice shouting, "Time's up, listeners. UA-certified robots will be coming around and bringing in anyone who is gravely injured or severely maimed, so don't worry about that." Who the hell was severely maimed? Hitoshi asked nobody in particular. The entire staff room was silent. They were all staring at the camera where the zero-pointer was. This 15-year-old child had just taken down a robot the size of a skyscraper. Quirkless. The first one to break the silence was Aizawa. "I think we found Oracle's recommendation student." "Oh, you think?" Mike spun around in his chair, his voice raised. "That kid's insane, Sho. You're training him, I don't care what you say. That kid's gonna learn how to use a capture scarf." "Already planning on it," Aizawa mumbled fondly. Nedzu hummed in agreement, thinking of all the possibilities. Oracle's recommendation student? Already friends with several other students? Aizawa was going to have an absolute field day with teaching someone like him. So, we all agree that those three passed? They all had some points to begin with, and worked together to defeat the zero-pointer. Midnight asked Nedzu. The rat merely nodded in agreement, a feral smile crossing across his face. Shinso Hitoshi, I wonder if he can get me into contact with Oracle. Shinso waited with anticipation for Izuku to get home. The boy had gone to the post office to get the, hopefully, acceptance letter from a P.O. box they set up, and was set to return any minute now. Moments later, Izuku kicked open the door to the room he was in. "Sorry I'm late, I had to harass some thug on my way back. Here's the letter." He chucked the letter to Hitoshi, who caught it and promptly tore it open. A small metal device fell out and landed on the coffee table. From the device, a holographic All Might appeared. "Oh God, does he even have a teaching license?" Izuku protested before anything could be said. "I am here." As a holographic image. "Young Shinso, you performed phenomenally on the written exam, being within the top 5 percentile of students who have taken the test in the past 20 years. You did leagues better than I did when I was a student." Izuku high-fived Hitoshi at the news, and they both smirked. "As for the physical exam, you got 35 villain points. Normally, this would not be enough to pass. However, there is a secret type of point called rescue points. The more people you rescue, and the harder the rescue situation is, the more points you get. You received 64 rescue points, raising your total to 99 points total. The highest score in the exam. So, young Shinso, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you." If both the brainwasher and the vigilante in the room had tears in their eyes, that was nobody's business but their own. "Welcome to your hero academia. Can't believe they stuffed you out of that last point," Izuku mumbled after the recording ended. "Of course that's what you'd focus on," Hitoshi said indignantly, playfully shoving Izuku as the other boy laughed. Hitoshi wasn't sure what he was expecting when he was going to UA. What he definitely wasn't expecting was walking in on a boy who resembled an angry Pomeranian yelling at a man who was moving like a robot. "Get your feet off the desk. That is very unhero-like behavior." The boy with glasses chopped his hand up and down, and the blonde boy scoffed. "Foff and die for eyes. I'll do whatever the hell I want. Don't use such foul language." Glasses reprimanded the blonde. Don't get up in everyone's faces because they aren't following the rules to a T, the blonde responded gruffly. What the hell dash, Hitoshi started, but was cut off by another yell. Shinso, I'm glad you made it. You kicked that robot's butt? Hitoshi turned to see Denki standing there, a wide grin on his face. Behind him was a girl with pink skin and hair, and 2 small horns. Hold up, this is the dude that beat the 0-pointer? She squealed. Several people looked up at him, and Hitoshi wanted to sink into the ground. The explosive blonde stood up and strode towards him, small explosions popping in his palms. You're the kid that beat me in the entrance exam, huh? He looked Hitoshi up and down, oddly calm for the aura he was giving off. I'm gonna kick your butt. Before Hitoshi could respond, a voice sounded from the doorway. Well, you all are quite friendly, but if that's your only goal, then get the hell out of my classroom. Everyone looked to the doorway, and upon seeing nobody, looked down. Lying on the floor was a very exhausted man in a yellow sleeping bag. The man unzipped it and stepped out, revealing to Hitoshi that he was Eraserhead, his favorite hero as a kid and the person Izuku has been tormenting for half a year. Holy shit, what the hell was his luck? And walked to the pedestal in front of the class as everyone hurried to their seats. 8 seconds. It took 8 seconds for you all to quiet down. Time spent like that is time wasted. My name is Aizawa Shoyuda, otherwise known as Pro Hero Eraserhead, and I'm going to be your homeroom teacher. Meet me on the training field in 10 minutes. Gym uniforms are in the locker rooms. Aizawa turned and walked out of the classroom, the class following close behind. Hitoshi had a feeling that not everyone present was ready. Update: not everyone present was ready. Bakugou was sent up to throw the ball first. Bakugou will throw first as he got second in the entrance exam, Aizawa said, clearly taking pleasure at the explosive boy's aggressive muttering. And upon his throw of 705.2 meters. Someone said something about it being fun, and Hitoshi tried not to wince. That's a surefire way to PSS off a teacher, he thought grimly. Fun? You think this is fun? How's a little risk to add to the fun? Whoever gets last place is expelled. As soon as Aizawa finished that sentence, the class changed from excited to downright terrified. During the tests, everyone was horrified. Hitoshi was able to take advantage and brainwash a girl with a zero-gravity quirk to use her quirk on him before the run, making him get a time that was near superhuman, warranting a few excited questions from some of his classmates. Whoa, dude, do you have a speed quirk or something? Denki asked as soon as Hitoshi finished the dash. In the background, Uraraka released her quirk on herself, and Hitoshi felt his gravity return. I do CrossFit, he deadpanned. Other than that, the tests were uneventful until the ball throw. Hitoshi watched the kids throw the ball, looking for who'd get the longest distance. In the end, it was the zero-gravity girl with a score of infinity. How the hell is the girl with an invisibility quirk supposed to compete with this? Hitoshi sighed internally, and formed his plan. Hitoshi walked up to the pitch last, and took the ball in his hand. He grasped it hard, brought his hand back to throw it, and then stopped. He turned to the crowd with a confused look on his face. Hey, gravity girl? What's your name again? The brunette in question pointed to herself in confusion, and responded when Hitoshi nodded. I'm Dash. She was cut off as Hitoshi took control, and her pupils faded to a dull hazel. Activate your quirk on this ball, he commanded the girl. She walked forwards and touched the ball with all 5 fingers, and Hitoshi lazily chucked the ball and watched it soar along with the rest of the class. After a moment, Aizawa turned the device around to show a large infinity symbol, and Hitoshi nodded. Release your quirk. Release, Uraraka mumbled as she put her fingers together. Hitoshi relinquished control, and the girl's eyes went wide as her pupils returned. Before anyone could say anything, a boy with blue hair spoke up while chopping his arms aggressively. Aizawa-sensei, surely that isn't allowed. He used outside help, it isn't fair dash. The boy's protests were cut off by Aizawa's hand going up as a warning to be quiet. All I said was that he had to stay in the circle. Heroics isn't about being fair. If you have an opportunity to ambush someone, as dishonorable as it is, you take that opportunity. Shinso was using his quirk and the resources available to him in order to be the best that he can. Aizawa turned to Hitoshi, and stared at the boy. That's exactly what I'd expect from the kid who placed first on the entrance exam. Good job, kid. Of course, sensei, my apologies. The robotic kid replied, chopping his arm. After all the tests were said and done, Hitoshi looked at the board. 14th place isn't that bad, gonna be honest, Hitoshi thought. In the corner of his eye, he saw the invisible girl crying as she was comforted by the girl who made a hole but rocket launcher during the ball throw. Hitoshi saw a nearly unnoticeable look of pity on Aizawa's face when he looked at the invisible girl, before he steeled his expression and looked forward. By the way, that was a logical ruse. Nobody is getting, nor was ever getting, expelled for placing last. That was just a method to bring out the best in you. Hitoshi didn't believe it for a second. That man was completely ready to expel the person who got last. He probably just didn't want to expel someone with good drive and a good quirk just because it wasn't flashy. Good on him for knowing how to teach. After lunch, the class Hitoshi was looking forward to had finally arrived. Foundational Heroics. He could finally show that he deserved to be in the hero course. Silently, he wondered if fate would be cruel enough to pair him up against the explosive boy who already had a grudge against him, or worse, the electric boy he definitely didn't have a crush on. Nope, not Hitoshi. If he was honest with himself, the only thing worse than that would be if his teacher was. I am here. Coming through the door like a normal person. All Might burst through the door, admittedly not at all like a normal person, in his Silver Age costume. If his teacher was All Might, fate was definitely cruel enough to pair Hitoshi up against both the explosive boy and the electric boy. Because motherfucking All Might was his heroics teacher. The man most likely didn't even have a teaching license. And yet everyone was so goddamn excited for him to teach. There was no way this would end any way other than poorly. Hitoshi was pretty proud of Mei for what she did with his costume. He had 2 elbow-high fingerless gloves that weren't modeled after a certain Vigilante's, with black and purple stripes, a black short-sleeved shirt made with extremely strong cloth, long black pants with several first-aid items in them, and black combat boots. Over his face he had a mask with persona cords so he could mimic anyone's voice. A key difference between his and Izuku's mask, Izuku's only had a voice changer. Around both of his gloves were 2 ribbons, each about half the length of Aizawa's capture scarf. Above his second knuckles were thin blades that could pop out. Like cat claws. She did listen. Everyone else was in pretty standard costumes, barring Sparkles and Ingenium 2.0, they looked like they were in full suits of armor as they walked towards All Might. The man beamed and explained the exercise, and really, making students pretend they're villains? Way to make self-confidence skyrocket, All Might, and pulled out lots to draw for the teams. Hitoshi prayed that whatever god was out there had some sort of mercy on him, and Team A is Shinso and Kaminari. All Might interrupted his thoughts. All right, not Bakugou. That's good, that man probably doesn't have a single cooperative bone in his body. Hitoshi just silently hoped that the Kaminari boy didn't hate him. Upon feeling something poke him in the shoulder, he turned around to see Denki smiling at him widely. Hitoshi's eyes widened for a moment, before he sighed. Your last name is Kaminari, isn't it? Yep, the electric boy replied excitedly. Hitoshi put his hand on his forehead, sighing fondly. This kid couldn't even leave him alone. Well, at least he doesn't have to do this exercise with Bakugou. Team A and Team D were up against each other first. Team A consisted of Hitoshi and Denki, should he call him Kaminari now, while Team D consisted of Ida and Bakugou. Hitoshi face-bombed. That's it, I'm an atheist now. At least Team A were the heroes. Think about the little victories. What was that? Denki, Kaminari? Asked him. They were standing outside the building, planning and waiting for the bomb to be hidden by the villains. Nothing. Do you have a plan? Hitoshi asked, and the boy shook his head. Sorry, I'm strategically challenged. Hitoshi paced, thinking before getting an idea. All Might never said he couldn't ask for outside help, right? 1 second, I have to make a call. Hitoshi pulled out his phone and clicked on a contact, letting it ring for a moment before it picked up. Hitoshi quickly put it on speaker. Hey Izuku. Hitoshi, what the actual F-? I'm trying to make blueprints for a grenade. Denki looked at Hitoshi and the phone like they were a bomb. Which, knowing Izuku, could very well be true. Plus, you're in class right now. What the hell are you doing calling me? Heroics training. Listen, can you analyze some quirks real quick and give me a battle plan? Hitoshi asked, and Izuku hummed in agreement. Great. First one is an engine quirk. He has engines in his calves dash. Tenya Ida, right? Ingenium's little brother. The kid's gotta stick up his but he knows how to fight. He can move very fast, but without much precision due to a lack of training. Just dodge around him and have a plan to get out of capture. Next. The next one is a kid with an explosion quirk that comes out of his palms. Hitoshi waited a moment, before Izuku broke into laughter. Oh god, this is gonna be easy. He'll go right for you, you beat him in the entrance exam. He needs to prove himself, after all. Then he'll swing a right hook at you as soon as he sees you, probably shouting out an insult as he does so. It'll be hard to miss him. If you can brainwash him, great. Problem solved. Seeing as he probably knows your quirk though, he won't respond easily. He's a stubborn a-hole who relies too much on his quirk. Just stay away from his palms and play defensive. How the hell does your friend know so much about Bakugou, dude? Kaminari asked, utterly lost at the conversation. No clue, but the dude's an expert analyst. If he says a plan will work, it'll work. Hitoshi turned his direction back to the phone. By the way, Todoroki's in this class. You shut your dimmin' mouth if you know what's good for you, Shinso, Izuku hissed over the phone. Okay, I'm sorry. Please don't put me on your naughty list or whatever the F you call it. Hitoshi laughed. Izuku grumbled something and hung up, leaving a confused Kaminari. What the hell was that? Kaminari asked, utterly lost. Hitoshi was about to reply when he got a text, detailing a plan to win. Somehow he found out that Kaminari was on his team, using everything he had at his disposal. That was the best goddamn brainstorming session you'll ever catch me being a part of, Hitoshi smirked. Now, the plan. Begin. As soon as All Might's voice rang through the speakers, Hitoshi and Kaminari dashed in. The plan was simple. Find Bakugou, brainwash Bakugou, find the bomb, brainwash Ida. Simple, easy plan. Absolutely no way it could go wrong. And that's exactly where it went wrong. About a minute into the exercise, Bakugou turned the corner to be met face to face with the two boys. Kaminari was about to step forward, before Hitoshi put an arm out. You go ahead and look for the bomb, I'll brainwash him and catch up. Worst case scenario, I kick his butt. Kaminari nodded and ran to the stairs, bounding up them. Bakugou dashed towards Hitoshi, drawing back his right fist in preparation for a right hook. Hitoshi parried the punch, swinging the explosive boy over his shoulder and slamming him into the concrete of the building. He got into a fighting position, while the explosive boy stood up with a groan and assumed a similar position. Stay down, Bakugou. Are we clear? Bakugou was silent. Hitoshi huffed out a breath of annoyance. Fine, we'll do this the hard way, he said, flinging the capture weapon around his left hand around the explosive boy's waist. As he brought back his arm, dragging Bakugou along with him, he threw a right hook that nailed the other boy directly in the face, knocking him a few feet away. Bakugou scrambled up and used his explosions to propel himself forward towards Hitoshi. Hitoshi dodged to the side and tried using his quirk. Oh come on Bakugou, can't you even hit me? I'm fighting practically quirkless. Bakugou visibly stiffened at that, but said nothing. Hitoshi took the opportunity of the explosive boy being still for once, and threw his right capture weapon around Bakugou's waist. As he tore his arm back, flinging Bakugou towards him, the explosive boy regained his composure. He placed his right hand on the weapon, and used his left hand to propel himself over Hitoshi. He blasted the brainwasher in the back, sending him stumbling forward from the force. Hitoshi stumbled to stand, placing a hand to his ear. Kaminari, what's your status? Just found the bomb, dealing with Ida right now. Kaminari responded, clearly focused. Hitoshi nodded despite the electric boy not being able to see him. Hitoshi was about to vocally confirm, but Bakugou interrupted him. You know, I hope the support department actually did a decent job with my costume. Bakugou held up his hand, pointing his palm at Hitoshi. These gauntlets aren't just for show, you know. They store up my nitroglycerin-like sweat. He curled his outstretched hand into a fist, and Hitoshi realized what the gauntlets were for. Bakugou only confirmed the fears. I can use them to release a blast that would be too large for me to use safely without them. Bakugou, what the hell are you saying? Hitoshi tried, only to be met by a feral grin by Bakugou. His finger curled around the pin in his gauntlet, about to pull it. Young Bakugou, don't use that indoors. If you do it, you'll lose instantly. Or worse, you'll kill him. All Might said sternly. Bakugou didn't look deterred. He won't die if he dodges. He shouted, a violent glint in his voice. As he pulled the pin, seemingly in slow motion, Hitoshi tried to dodge out of the way. He tried, but there were no hallways nearby. None that he could safely get to. His safest option was to dive away from the blast and lay on the floor. As he slid across the floor, Bakugou pulled the pin. As the explosion sounded out, Hitoshi closed his eyes in anticipation. Only for the explosion to not even come close to him. Denki was expecting a fight with Ida. He was expecting to either lose his wattage limit or get captured instantly. What he was not expecting was, as soon as he dashed forward in a vain attempt to try and touch the bomb before Ida could react, he was interrupted by All Might's voice. Young Bakugou, don't use that indoors. If you do it, you'll lose instantly. Or worse, you'll kill him. He said sternly. Use what? Denki thought curiously. His answer was promptly given to him, more like move violently into his hands, when the floor crumbled from under him with a violent burst of heat. As he stood up from the rubble with a groan, he brushed off his costume and looked around. In front of him was Bakugou, rubbing his shoulder in pain. He spun around to see Shinso, covered in dust and groaning, his legs stuck under rubble. Before anyone could say anything, the brainwasher sat up with a light groan of pain. Did you have to break my leg, Pop Rocks? The F. Bakugou's anger was cut off by Shinso brainwashing him, making the explosive boy quiet for the first time since Denki had met him. Tie yourself up and surrender, Shinso commanded. Bakugou tied himself up with the capture tape, slumping against the wall as Shinso released his brainwashing. He lifted the rubble off, careful not to put pressure on his left foot as he stood shakily. You ready to get the bomb, Sparks? Denki grinned at the other boy. Of course. Yes, sir. Should we stop the exercise? Bakugou used his gauntlet. One of the girls, Ashido, asked. Shudo secretly agreed. That blast could have killed Shinso, or worse, toppled the building on the four of them if it was used on one of the walls, or at a lower level. Young Bakugou is out, and nobody is lethally injured, so I don't see why not, All Might responded. Shudo could make out unease in his voice, as if wondering if he should continue the match. To be fair, Bakugou was tied up, grumbling to himself, and Shinso looked bearable. He refused to put weight on his left leg as he pulled himself up to the room with the bomb. He started saying something, taking his mask off as he did, and Ida managed not to respond. The boy with the engine quirk sped towards Shinso, flinging a kick directly at his chest. Shinso ducked below the kick, a pipe behind him being completely torn from the wall and flung across the room. Shinso tried to stand up, but crumpled under his leg. Ida quickly knelt down to tie him up, before Shinso said something. Shudo squinted at the screen, making out what his lips were saying. Behind you, Ida. Behind him? It wasn't like Kaminari could outpace Ida and make it to the bomb before he did, especially with Ida being in between the electric boy and the bomb. Ida clearly didn't take the warning seriously, as he clearly wasn't expecting the electrically charged metal pipe slamming into his thigh, and Kaminari bolting past him as Ida crumpled to the floor from the electricity surging through his body. Kaminari slapped his hand on the bomb, and as he did, All Might's voice rang out. Hero team wins. Shinso was smirking at Kaminari, who looked ecstatic at the win. Ida looked distraught, to put it nicely, but was taking the loss well. Bakugou, on the other hand, wasn't as bad as Shudo expected either. Sure, he was grumbling about how bullshit it was that he lost, but he didn't seem to act like a piece of shit over it. Shudo would have examined the wreckage longer, but had to get ready for his own match. He walked out to the field, already coming up with an idea to win as fast as possible. Toshinori watched the one-on-one fights, studying the participants intently. Part of him knew that he should just give one for all to the boy Night Eye proposed, but the two weren't quite on speaking terms. Toshinori knew that it was a childish resentment, but he was still annoyed at Night Eye for his attempt at control. Plus, the Mirio boy was in his last year of schooling. He was set to become an extremely powerful hero even without One for All's power, and Toshinori didn't want to push an unfamiliar power on him during his last year of schooling. This was the main reason, and not his lasting annoyance at his former sidekick. Right now, he had a few ideas for candidates of One for All. Ojiro was one, having impressive martial arts skills and a powerful drive to be a hero. His already existing tail quirk would assist him greatly with One for All. Another was Kirishima. The boy was passionate about heroism, and One for All would pair well with his hardening quirk. He had a powerful drive to help as many people. The only issue he really had was the fact that his quirk wasn't very flashy, and so he felt like he wouldn't stand out. A third option was Uraraka. She was very upbeat and could become the next symbol of peace with her attitude. An overall good pick for his successor. She could instill hope in the people with her aura, with or without One for All. Having the quirk passed on to her would simply amplify the safety instilled upon people when she arrived at the scene. Fourth option, one that was eliminated during the training exercise, was Bakugou. He clearly had a drive to be a great hero, and his quirk was fantastic for it. However, if Bakugou had One for All and was killed, either due to All for One or his arrogance, the runner-up to him would be far too distant from him in both levels of power and reliance. It's what would eventually happen when Toshinori had to retire, and he was dreading that moment. For that reason, Toshinori wanted to give his quirk to someone who didn't have a flashy, physical quirk. Maybe someone in Class 1B is a better candidate, he thought to himself. Toshi, I'm back from Maze. I was grabbing some sheet from her, Izuku called out as he walked in the door. Hitoshi was currently hanging upside down, lifting weights while wearing sunglasses and a shirt that said, pants. Sheet's been whack. It's the third day of school and there was a media break-in. I also think Bakugou hates me. Don't take it personally, he hates everyone. Also, what was that about a media break-in? Izuku asked, raising an eyebrow. He quickly opened a mini fridge they'd bought with money stolen from serial killers. You'd be surprised how rich serial killers are, and pulled out a tub of ice cream. The gate got destroyed and a bunch of reporters broke in. Nothing was reported missing, but the whole thing's kinda sketchy. Hitoshi dropped from his upside-down position, landing on his feet and sitting down next to Izuku. What are you doing tomorrow? Going on a field trip, apparently. I'm coming with you. Izuku decided. You know what the... Aizawa would hate to see you, and that sheet is gonna be the lifeblood of me. Hitoshi laughed to himself lightly. Alright, now go pass out. It's 1 a.m. and if you're going on a field trip, you need the sleep. If nothing else, to be a chaotic B3. Fine. Good night, Damas. The bus was noisy. Hitoshi leaned against the window, letting out a sigh and adjusting his gloves. They were going to do rescue training at the USJ, an off-site training area. Hitoshi thought he could get a decent amount of sleep on the drive there, maybe a 10-minute nap, but he was cursed with nonsense social interaction. Shinsukuin, ribbit. Hitoshi suppressed a groan and turned around to look at the person who said his name, a girl with a frog quirk. What? Hitoshi internally winced at how annoyed he probably came across, but the girl didn't seem to mind. I'd like to preface this by saying that I am dangerously blunt sometimes. I speak my mind with no care for societal norms. So forgive me if I sound rude. Hitoshi tried to ignore the several gazes pointed at the two of them, but it was hard when the entire goddamn bus had gone quiet to eavesdrop on their conversation. But your quirk is a mental one that only works on human beings. How did you place first on the entrance exam if it was against robots? Hitoshi stared at her blankly, blinking a few times before responding. I grabbed a shard of metal and started stabbing things. That and rescue points. I didn't even know about the rescue points either. Wait yet. He basically beat those robots quirkless. the redhead shouted across the bus. Hitoshi stiffened at the implications. The class wasn't quirkist against villainous quirks, but who knew what their reaction towards quirkless people would be? Hitoshi was about to respond, before he was cut off by a loud shout. "You got a problem with quirkless people, shitty hair?" "Huh?" Hitoshi spun around to see the explosive blonde, Bakugou, glaring at everyone violently. "That goes for all of you. If you got a problem with quirkless people, you've got a problem with me, assholes." A few people started mumbling, and Kaminari laughed lightly. Who knew Bakugou would be a quirk activist? His personality kinda screams, dumpster fire that couldn't start due to an excess of sewage dumped on it, you know? No offense, bro. How the F are you gonna say that and not expect it to be offensive, sparkplug? Bakugou shouted, causing a few people to start laughing. "I mean, he isn't wrong, you do seem like an a-hole, fireworks." The girl with earphone jacks as ears looked up, trying to suppress a smirk. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" "Oh my god, for the love of all that is untainted in this universe, shut up." Aizawa groaned from the front, crawling out of his sleeping bag. "We're here." As the class gathered around the entrance, Aizawa walked over to 13. The space hero said something, and held up 3 fingers. Aizawa grumbled something that sounded like, "Shouldn't have let him be a teacher here," and 13 walked over and started to give a speech on how dangerous quirks could be if used on a person. Something Hitoshi and, judging by their slight stiffening, Bakugou and Todoroki knew far too well. They walked further into the USJ, 13 about to divide up groups for the rescue. Then out of the corner of his eye, Hitoshi saw a small purple orb near the fountain slowly expand. "Aizawa? Is that the exercise starting, or?" Aizawa turned, looking at the purple expanding orb, and his eyes narrowed in rage as the portal started to open and several people started to flood out. Aizawa's quirk flared, and he grabbed his scarf. "No. These are actual villains. All of you run. If you can't, try to contact the school." Aizawa sprinted down the stairs before anyone could say anything. Hitoshi couldn't think. The man was an underground hero for a reason. He didn't do good in prolonged fights, and thrived in ambush or one-on-one situations. Going against so many opponents, he was practically asking to die. Nothing would save their teacher at this point. And then, raining glass down upon a group of villains, a panel of the roof shattered. Izuku just wanted to watch his best friend, brother in all but blood, roommates training exercise, and maybe PSS off his teacher. What he didn't want to do was watch Shoyuta throw himself into about 100 villains. The man wasn't suited for this type of combat. He was signing his will right then and there to prolong the lives of these kids. And damn it, if that isn't the exact reason Izuku became a vigilante. He started to punch the glass panel of the roof he was watching from. Oh yeah, he was watching from the roof, watching as it did literally nothing. "Diamond bulletproof glass," he muttered to himself. He was about to pull out a knife, before realizing that it would likely be futile against the glass. So, he fought fireproof with fire. Okay, maybe I'm not the best at analogies, Izuku thought, and pulled out his gun and shot a few times at the glass. After the 3rd shot, the glass shattered under him, dropping him into the USD. It was at this moment that Izuku realized that he was very high in the air. He didn't even have time to panic before he flung his arm out, shooting a hook around a nearby mountain, sending him barreling towards the rock. As he landed, he shot another hook around one of the villains near Shoyuta and flung himself towards them, colliding midair with them and landing with a roll over their now unconscious body. "Oracle, what the hell are you doing here?" Shoyuta hissed at him as he stood up and put his back to the pro. "Saving a homeless suicidal maniac. What brings you here?" Izuku snarked back, slipping slightly out of his worry and into his confident persona. Internally he realized how hypocritical that statement was, but he'd ignore the irony of it for now. Trying to teach, but apparently this gaggle of criminals, he flung out his capture scarf, wrapping around one of them and dragging them towards him, decided to interrupt. He punctuated the last word with a punch to a criminal's face, and flung an elbow out in time for it to land on someone Izuku flung at him with a sickening crack of his nose and possibly part of his skull. The villain collapsed unconscious, but neither focused on that part. They focused on trying not to die and redirecting the quirked attacks at other villains instead of themselves. Fun, I originally came here to F with you, but I guess we have a different agenda today. Izuku joked as he jumped over a stream of fire, said fire propelling another villain into the ruin zone. As the vigilante and hero duo slowly made their way through the crowd, the only injury on either of them being Shuta's elbow being disintegrated slightly, they both heard a voice ring out from the flood zone. Crusty but beach with the hand of... Izuku turned at the unfamiliar voice only to see, oh my god you dumb, Hitoshi standing atop a sinking boat. The BSRD with hands turned to him angrily and started scratching his neck. What do you want, you NP-? Before he could finish his sentence, his posture slumped over. The telltale sign of being under Hitoshi's brainwashing. Use your quirk on yourself. The man placed his hands together, all 5 fingers touching. And Izuku paled at what he saw. Because the skin on the man's fingertips started to decay before his eyes, before the man pulled his hands back with a shout of pain and rage. His fingertips were bleeding and the muscle was exposed to the air, and he started to breathe heavily. That little worm. The useless, meddling, backtracking side quest motherfucker has the audacity. He looked between Hitoshi and Shoyuta, and a smirk appeared behind the hand on his face. BS artists like him don't care if you hurt them physically, we've gotta hurt the people close to him to make him hurt. Nomu. It was then that Izuku realized a fatal mistake. He let Shoyuta separate himself from him, slowly moving away to get the vigilante less involved in the villain attack. As such, he was powerless to stop the bird-like creature as it grabbed the pro and snapped his arms like twigs. The only thing Shoyuta could do to it was stab it in the hand, which quickly healed. Regeneration quirk, then. He ran towards the pro hero, but was interrupted by Hanzi getting in his way. Izuku didn't even try to negotiate. He pulled out a knife, moving his arm forward to stab the man. He dodged, only barely, Izuku noted, and grabbed Izuku's forearm. The skin started to flake off rapidly, turning to dust that was getting into the muscle. Izuku didn't care though. There was too much adrenaline pumping through him to be stopped by the wound. As the man was grasping his forearm, Izuku did the same to him. Stabbing his knife into the man's arm, he flipped him over his shoulder and slammed him into the concrete as hard as possible. The lack of crusty hands and blossoming pain shooting through his arms was welcome as the man landed with a pained grunt. Before Izuku could move to Shoyuta, however, he felt the floor give out from under him as he fell through a portal. Hitoshi watched, wanting to puke at the sight. Aizawa had both his arms cracked like a glow stick, and the large behemoth was now slamming his face into the ground violently. Hitoshi had only seen that much blood after Izuku fought Endeavor, and that was highly concerning to think about. The bird-like creature seemingly didn't respond to anything, so brainwashing it was out of the picture. Hanzi probably wouldn't fall for his brainwashing trick again, so that left one person. Kurogyri, get the NPCs, Hitoshi shouted in the hand guy's voice. Kurogyri didn't even turn as he replied. Of course, Tamura Shirdash, his yellow eyes dulled, and the mist started to recede slightly. Hitoshi couldn't tell though. He was busy having the most painful migraine of his life. There were so many voices in his head, screaming, screeching at him. Who are you? Where am I? Please not Sensei, please don't let it be Sensei Dash. What are you doing in Kurogyri's head? You aren't one of his vestiges Dash. Are the kids okay? What happened to Sho? Get out of Kurogyri's head. This is not your domain Dash. Hitoshi didn't hear anything else, as the brainwashing link was cut off from the sheer pain he felt. He felt someone grab his shoulder and recognized it as Azui. She said something and he nodded, not really processing it. His mask was taken off for him, and he wiped his nose of the blood trickling down. When did the blood show up? We've got to get off the ship, Azui said, grabbing him by the arm and jumping to shore with the brainwasher. Kurogyri was confused. Really confused. Tamura Shigaraki asked for his assistance, and he responded in kind, before his mind just clouded over. And he started hearing voices in his head. Who are you? Kurogyri flinched at the voice. It was shrill and enraged. Not sensei, but definitely familiar. Someone that Kurogyari unconsciously associated with sensei. Where am I? A young girl, one that Kurogyari also thought was familiar, cried out. Kurogyari tried to look through the mist, but he couldn't move. In the distance he saw a few shadowy figures crowded around a boy with purple hair. The boy looked strained, grasping his head. Kurogyari wanted to help him? Please not sensei, please don't let it be sensei dash. A man started to plead to him. To anyone in general. He was cut off by the first voice. What are you doing in Kurogyari's head? In his head? Was that what was happening? Was he going insane? Was caring for Tamura finally driving him over the edge? You aren't one of his vestiges dash. Vestiges? Why did that sound familiar? Kurogyari opened his mouth to ask, to try and say anything. What came out was a completely different voice from his own. It sounded young, untainted by the horrors of the world. Are the kids okay? What happened to Sho? Sho? Why did that sound familiar? Who is Sho? Everything was silent for a moment before the first voice came back, even more enraged. He sounded like something he spent his entire life working on had just been destroyed in front of his eyes. Get out of Kurogyari's head. This is not your domain dash. The mist was edited back into the purple-haired boy, and time seemed to move at a normal pace again. Was it moving slower? What just happened? A girl in green helped the purple-haired boy up, and Kurogyari redirected his attention to the fight. Just what was that though? And who is Sho? Kurogyari shudders at the thought of asking sensei these questions. Maybe it's best for him to learn about this independently. He winced as he looked over to see the Eraserhead get pummeled into the ground. He felt bad for the man, wondering if he should help him out, before internally scolding himself. That isn't what Tamura Shigaraki wants. I am a servant to him and sensei, he thought sternly. Though the traitorous thought lingered in his mind. Izuku was said the hell off. He was out for blood. He landed with a roll where the portal dropped him, instantly standing up and cursing to himself. He checked his right arm, seeing blood pour down his now exposed skin where the elbow-high glove used to be. Grunting annoyed, he pulled a secondary sleeve over his arm, one that could self-destruct, set itself on fire, drop to below -50 degrees, anything really. He turned the temperature on it down, cooling it so it would work as an ice pack to his flesh wound. Now that the lesser issue was taken care of, time to move on to more pressing matters. Such as Shoyuda Aizawa nearly getting murdered. He started off towards the center, and he saw red when he spotted what was happening near the middle. Shoyuda was lying face down in the concrete in a puddle of blood. Hitoshi and a girl with a frog quirk were in the water, and the man, Shigaraki, as the cloud of mist had so helpfully informed, dove at the two of them. Izuku wasn't fast enough. He watched in horror as Shigaraki's 5 fingers wrapped around the frog girl's face, and he waited for her head to crumble in on itself. Only for everyone to be standing perfectly still as his last finger connected. If Izuku wasn't moving, he'd have thought time had stopped. Then, Shigaraki laughed to himself. Not a maniacal giggle, just a soft laugh. You're pretty cool, Eraserhead. Izuku turned to look and saw that Shoyuda was using his quirk to stop Shigaraki from disintegrating the girl. Before anyone could react, Izuku shot out a grappling hook around his wrist and yanked him back. You're pretty cool, Eraserhead, Izuku replied in a childish, mocking tone. The man just looked insulted. God, does your oversized man-child looking but have anything better to do than attack you, eh? For God's sake, you crusty but be. Izuku internally noted the man's red sneakers which looked eerily similar to Izuku's, the ones he left on that rooftop when he let himself fall, left himself to die. Now was not the time to spiral, Izuku reminded himself. He had a job, save a hero with a death wish, and PSS off a villain. He pointed a knife at Shigaraki and flicked the blade upwards to beckon him forward. He scoffed angrily when the man visibly recoiled from him. What's wrong, Shiggy? You got a problem? I thought you were a villain, and all you did was just disintegrate some skin. I've had a middle school bully do way worse than that to me on the daily. Izuku flipped the knife around in his hand, becoming more confident in his being. Although, it kinda matches your maturity. Going on and on about how much you want to kill All Might? Like, I hate the guy but not enough to kill him. What did he ever do to you? He didn't save me. No hero saved me, Shigaraki snarled. Izuku laughed. He had to fight down hysterics at the response. What's so funny? Can't imagine that heroes aren't as perfect as you believe them to be. After a moment of just Izuku's harsh laughing, he replied with an equal snarl in his voice. All Might shattered my FING dreams of being a hero and left me to kill myself. After 10 years of being beaten down by the world, them giving me every reason to become a villain, All Might told me to give up. The same day I was told to kill myself by my childhood friend. Shigaraki's eyes were wide behind his hand, mouth opening and closing rapidly as he searched for a retort. I can give you the exact FING location. I bet some of my bloodstains are still there from when I took a swan dive off a roof. Izuku started to march towards Shigaraki, who backed away. How the hell aren't you a villain? Shigaraki questioned, gritting his teeth in rage and scratching his neck. Because despite the fact that everyone tried to beat it out of me, I still care for people. And I don't want anyone else to go through what I did. Izuku's hand tightened around the handle, and Shigaraki's scratching sped up. No, you're lying. Anyone who went through that would be a villain. There's no way you still like heroes after all that. You're lying. And you. Izuku could barely react before the bird-like creature was standing in front of him, winding up a punch. Izuku couldn't dodge. There wasn't enough time. He held up his arms to block it, and pain sparked through his arm violently as the punch connected. It sent him flying into the fountain, cracking the stone where his head smashed into it. He could feel something warm and wet trickling down the back of his head, matting his hair to his head. Everything was blurry, there were stars in his vision, there were two of everyone. His left arm was in such sharp pain. It was horrible, unbearable pain. With a sharp inhale, he pulled his glove off, and his eyes watered at the sight. His entire left arm was a dark purple from internal bleeding, and the bone was clearly shattered in several places. His tablet-type thing was still intact, so he quickly tapped the voice activation button. Before he could say anything, the Nomu was standing in front of him. Shigaraki said something, and Nomu picked him up by his right arm. It was going to die. Painfully. The Nomu started to crush his arm in his grip, and Izuku grit his teeth at the feeling of his wrist cracking under the pressure of the grip. It was then that Izuku got a horrible idea. This thing had weaker skin due to its regeneration, so it would hurt the Nomu more than him. Granted, it would still hurt him, but it was either this or death, so Izuku grit his teeth preemptively, blood trickling out of his mouth under the mask, and let out a pained whisper. Ignite. Sleeve. Shoyuta wasn't sure if what he heard was the result of his delirium, or if he was hearing right. And if he was hearing correctly, he wanted to vomit. Because Oracle just explained why he hated All Might. And Shoyuta wasn't sure why the hell this kid wasn't a villain. He had been told to kill himself by his best friend, and All Might shattered his dreams. Granted, he was definitely hearing things. There's no way that his kid, such a pure kid, could have lived through that and still been a vigilante. When that Nomu punched him into a fountain, he wanted to scream. Because he saw Oracle's arm, and it was a distorted purple. The boy looked like he was in so much pain. At least Shuta's arms were clean breaks, and he'd have Recovery Girl. Oracle would have nobody. If they even made it out of this alive. Then Shigaraki laughed to himself, smirked. Nomu, kill him painfully. First, take his arm off. I want him to hurt as badly as possible because of what he's done. The Nomu picked him up, and Shoyuta looked away. The first sign that something was wrong was that the Nomu started to screech in pain. The second was the fact that, holy shit, when Shoyuta looked back to the vigilante, what the F-, his entire right arm was on fire. Hot enough to hurt the Nomu. And he wasn't even making a sound. His eyes were squeezed shut, and he was writhing in pain, but he was silent all the while. And that's what terrified Shoyuta the most. The silence from the kid. The Nomu's screeches rang out through the USJ, eventually being joined by Oracle's heavy breathing. Shigaraki screamed something at the Nomu, and the Nomu must have let go the slightest bit because Oracle tore his wrist from the flame and shot out a grappling hook towards Shoyuta. He grabbed the man and pulled them over to one of the zones, panting. It looked like the landslide zone. Before either could react, All Might burst through the door. And he wasn't smiling. Somehow, that was the scariest thing Shoyuta had seen today. Both of them were panting heavily, Oracle's arms limp at his sides as Shoyuta leaned against him. Oracle crumpled to the floor, slumped against a piece of debris, and looked up to the roof. F- was the only thing he said. Shoyuta couldn't help but share that sentiment. Then he remembered what just happened. He snapped his head to the problem child, who was bandaging his burns with extreme care. What the F- Oracle? You could have died. And the sheet you said, was that all dash? Oracle? Aizawa-sensei? Both of them turned to see Todoroki standing there, half encased in ice, staring at the two of them. What happened to you guys? You should see the other guy. His brain's in the open air and I think his hand's missing. Oracle scoffed lightheartedly, and Todoroki walked up to them and knelt down. Pretty sure the brain part was just what he looked like, Shoyuta remarked with a raised eyebrow. Todoroki hissed in sympathy when he saw the vigilante's burn. How'd you get this? This is really bad, likely a deep third-degree burn right here. He pointed to the area Shigaraki disintegrated off of his forearm and the bit around it. Judging by the looks of it, lighter third degree in other areas. The villains didn't have a fire quirk, did they? Did it trigger anything? Oracle shook his head. Nah, you're the hottest one here. Unless you keep half your body encased in ice like that, which cannot be good for your health. Shoyuta raised an eyebrow at his problem child. Why the f was he flirting with his student? How the f was his student so oblivious to it? You're judging me on my health? Last time I saw you, you met me on a rooftop having a panic attack, with broken ribs and a cracked mask, and what felt like a fever. Todoroki pointed out, icing over Oracle's right arm. Excuse me, I didn't have a fever. Oracle indignantly pointed out. Yeah, you did. Your face was hot. Oracle choked on air. Wait, no, that sounded more like blood, at the deadpan exclamation. Plus, your cheeks were red. A lot like they are now. Did you seriously interrupt a villain attack with a fever? Todoroki huffed, tending to Oracle's left arm. Shoyuta didn't miss the aggressive blush on Oracle's face, and that's when it hit him. Holy shit, this vigilante was FENG love-struck with the most deadpan kid in his class. He sighed, resigning himself to giving one of them the shovel talk. Maybe both. Who knows? Oh God, he was becoming a dad, wasn't he? Well, that was something to think about when they weren't in the middle of a villain attack. A loud crash echoed from the middle, and Todoroki poked his head out from behind cover to look at it. All Might's fighting the bird thing. Shoyuta and Oracle both looked over the rock providing them cover, to see All Might and the Nomu trading blows equally. Gusts of wind poured out from the fight, making it impossible for anyone to get close, mainly Shigaraki and Bakugou, which Shoyuta had no clue why the student was trying to contend with the main villains. F- All Might's not gonna win this, Oracle murmured, and Shoyuta looked to the vigilante in confusion. Todoroki seemed to share the same confusion at the sentiment. What do you mean, problem child? What's happening? Oracle looked towards him with a dark expression. He's coughing up blood. It's been a lot longer than 3 hours. He won't win. Shuta's eyes went wide. How the hell did this kid find out about that? How did you dash? I'm going to help. Oracle stood up, but his shoulder was grasped by Todoroki. Like hell you are. Both your arms are broken and you shouldn't even be able to move. You're running off of dregs of adrenaline. I'm not letting you endanger yourself because you don't trust All Might. Todoroki stared Oracle in the eyes, and finally the problem child sighed in resignation. Fine, fine. His expression turned slightly somber. I'm sorry, Shudo. He was yanked away by a grappling hook he shot, out of reach of the two of them. His limp left arm left dangling behind him as he soared. But I'm not letting the symbol of peace die when I have the chance to save him. Shoyuta huffed angrily as Oracle bolted. Todoroki looked torn between chasing him or staying with his teacher. Finally, Shoyuta spoke up. Take me to the entrance where 13 is. They'll know what to do. Then you can go in to help Oracle. But if you do go in, then you have to promise me you'll stay out of danger. No fighting, only rescue. Clear? Of course, Aizawa-sensei. Todoroki picked the man up and started to walk with him, letting Shoyuta use him as a crutch. Mentally, the hero was confused by the vigilante's actions. What was he, suicidal or something? He must be, to go back into the fight after that. If only he knew how close to the truth he was. Toshinori was bracing himself against the rock floor, wind being generated by the flurry of blows they were exchanging. It was by a slide of luck that he won. The Nomu's left hand had been burned away and was but a stump. This let one punch that should have hit clean on Toshinori's slide past his, and the hero got a clean punch on the Nomu's chest. Then another. After a moment, the tides were turned. Toshinori was unleashing a flurry of max power punches into the Nomu's stomach. Shigaraki had said that he had shock absorption, not nullification. There had to be a limit, and limits can be exploited and broken. As he launched the Nomu out of the roof, shattering a glass panel, why was there another one broken, and sending the creature flying? He stood up straighter, his hands on his hips, victorious. He tried to ignore the blood on his hand, seeping out of his wound where the Nomu had hit. Guess I really am getting weaker, huh? He declared to nobody in particular, slightly under his breath. He turned his head slightly and only then realized that there were two very powerful villains about 10 feet away from him. Villains. You have 3 options. Toshinori raised a hand to hold up a finger, and the strain was immense. He could barely maintain his muscle form, and the edges of his vision were blurring with unconsciousness when he moved. He was so effed, but maybe he could keep up the bluff long enough. 1. You surrender here and now, and your sentence will be less than death. 2. You flee with your tail between your legs, and never return. You repent for your villainy and turn into respectable civilians. Or 3. You die here today. Choose wisely. The leader, Shigaraki, became enraged and started to scratch his neck. No. Sensei said you were weaker. Sensei said that Nomu would kill you. Sensei lied. He said he choked on his words slightly. He said that nobody had it worse than me. I hate you. Tamura Shigaraki, do you not see it? All Might would have just rushed forward to attack us had he been at full strength. The man is not kind towards people like us. The misty man gestured towards All Might, dust smothering the smoke coming off his body. If they rushed at him, he'd have no defense against them. We still have a chance. Kurogiri, you're right. We can still kill. All Might. Shigaraki stumbled forward slightly, looking like the adrenaline had worn off. Suddenly he lunged forward, hand outstretched towards Toshinori. This was it. This was where Toshinori, and One for All died. He internally apologized to Naomasa, Night Eye, and Nana. They were all so great to him, and he let them down. The last thing he could do was try to die in his muscle form. But the touch never came. Instead, a loud grunt and thud rang out in front of him, and when Toshinori opened his eyes, he couldn't believe what he saw. A child, or a midget, in a hoodie stood with their back to him, in between him and Shigaraki, who was laying on the floor. There was blood all over their back, and their left arm was a deep purple. It was clearly shattered in several places, and twisted in a way that made Toshinori want to wince. Their right arm was covered in ice, but below it was a very nasty burn wound. Slightly obscured by the blood, the back of the child's hoodie said, "Hoodie," in all capital letters. This wasn't a villain, nor a hero. So who were they? The child let out a sharp laugh. Judging by the voice, they were in fact young, but likely not younger than a teenager despite their height. Toshinori let out an internal sigh of relief, and readied into a battle stance. Come on, Shigaraki. What's wrong, Dustfuck? Can't you beat the mini-boss? Or am I tougher than All Might? Jesus Christ, Shigaraki, I've been fighting Quirkless this whole time and you still can't manage to beat me? The child walked forward calmly, blocking Shigaraki's outstretched hand with a kick that disintegrated the bottom of his boot and snapped Shigaraki's wrist with a loud crack and a shriek of pain. What's wrong? Can't take a broken fucking bone, Shiggy? Well, too bad, because you broke 7 of mine. 2 gunshots sounded out and landed into Shigaraki's legs as he tried to stand, and the mist quickly covered Shigaraki's enraged form. As the mist shrank and Shigaraki was gone, all seemed quiet. Then the boy turned to him. He had green hair with a few white streaks through it, and looked eerily familiar, in more ways than one, even though much of it was matted to his head with blood. Next time, let other heroes do their job. You're the #1 hero, keep your head in the game. I don't know why you're teaching here, but it's gotta be important, so don't waste it by stopping petty crime that could be stopped by the hero in the block. The boy collapsed onto the floor, looking up to the roof. Naomasa and Shoyuta wondered what my quirk was, that let me get away so easily. Shoyuta? Toshinori asked the boy. Aizawa, he clarified. Anyway, I purposefully didn't use it here today. Because I knew you would be here. The boy looked Toshinori in the eyes, the green eyes eerily familiar. I did it for one reason. I risked my life even more than I needed to prove one thing. To prove to you that Izuku Midoriya could have been a hero without a quirk. To prove that you were wrong. Toshinori froze at that statement. How do you dash? I found him right before he died. Honestly, were he still alive, I think that Izuku would have forgiven you for that. Would have still adored you. The boy turned to stare Toshinori dead in the eyes. I would have preferred he die than still like you, Yagi. The boy promptly collapsed on the floor, and Cementos formed a wall, blocking Toshinori from the rest of the students. The boy laughed lightly from the ground. Don't worry, I wouldn't dream of selling your secret. I may hate you on a personal level, but I respect you on a professional level. Your fall would be devastating to hero society. People may think I'm a crook for being a vigilante, but I just want to help people like Izuku used to be. People like I used to be. Cementos finally realized that the vigilante was there, and sent a wall of cement cascading over the boy. When Cementos appeared beside Toshinori and looked inside the cement dome, he cursed when it was found empty. Toshinori didn't care. He was busy contemplating that boy from 11 months ago. The first thing that Shoyuta realized was that his entire body was slightly numb. His right elbow was twinging in a light pain, and his eyes blinked open slowly. The room smelled like antiseptic, and the concrete floor of the USJ had been replaced by a soft mattress. Wait, when did he leave the USJ? Shoyuta sat up quickly, his ribs despising the action and his arms flaring in pain. He winced in pain, and his left eye also started to hurt violently. Calm down. Who was that? Everything sounded underwater, a prick in his arm, and he fell into a soundless sleep again. When he woke up, he felt a bit more present. He could hear properly, and his eyes fluttered open. He groaned as he tried to sit up, but someone forced him back down. Not again, Sho. You just woke up, calm down. Zashi? Shoyuta groaned. His throat felt sore and dry, and his mind was lethargic. Hizashi placed a hand on his arm carefully. It's all right, you're gonna be okay. Students? Shinso had a migraine and Kaminari went overboard, but other than that, no injuries. Hizashi reassured him. Problem, child? Hizashi's eyes widened at the question. The vigilante? He got fed up. Shoyuta coughed violently. After his coughing fit was done, he continued. His arms, Zashi. His arms were shattered. He was in worse shape than me. 3rd-degree burns on his right arm, so many broken bones. Hizashi rubbed his arms soothingly. Cementos saw him, but he got away. He saw Yagi's real form dash. He already knew. He let me know that All Might wouldn't win, then charged in there. Hizashi's words processed in his mind. He's gonna die. He needs medical attention. Shoyuta tried to stand up, but was pushed down by Hizashi again. We're looking for him. How long has it been since the USJ? 2 days. As soon as Recovery Girl clears me to walk, we're going to talk to Shinso. I'm still set at you. Hitoshi snapped. He had been set at Izuku since the USJ because he thought Izuku was dead. Then he came home and saw Izuku doing impromptu surgery on his left arm, with a broken wrist. How Izuku learned to sew a wound closed that effectively, Hitoshi didn't want to know. I know, but Izuku was cut off by 3 loud knocks on the door. The two looked at each other, on edge. You didn't forget to pay rent again, right? That was one goddamn time, Hitoshi. And no, I didn't. Get behind me then. Izuku nodded and threw his mask and visor on, and Hitoshi warily opened the door. Standing outside was a mummified Aizawa and a worried present Mike. His eyes widened in surprise as he stepped back, carefully. Aizawa-sensei? Izuku stood up quickly. What's your full name? Shoyuta Aizawa. Izuku nodded minutely but stood his ground. Where'd we meet? I was walking home from patrol and you were at Dagoba Beach. You told me you had a recommendation student. Aizawa answered immediately. Why didn't you expel Hitoshi? He has potential. And? Aizawa sighed. And he got first in the biased entrance exam with a non-physical quirk, and he doesn't rely on his quirk to win a fight, he drawled while looking at the ceiling. And he's your favorite? Oracle, shut the F up. Aizawa said sternly. Good to see you're still alive, Shoyuta. What was the game of 20 questions for? Aizawa asked deadpan. Serial killer Himiko Toga has gone silent recently and I'm worried she's focusing on a larger target. Her quirk lets her shapeshift into anyone whose blood she's digested, so she could have gotten your blood from the USJ and gone after me to kill me, sent by the League. Izuku explained in one breath. Aizawa stared at Izuku for a moment before sighing. Anyways, I had recovery girl, what medical attention did you get? Aizawa asked. Izuku's eyes widened and he started sputtering, which Hitoshi took as an invitation to speak. He did surgery on himself. A beat of silence passed through the room, then Aizawa started walking towards Izuku. Shoyuta, don't do this, Izuku said. We're both injured, and my surgery wound is healing. Why not just go to recovery girl? You could have died. Aizawa placed his cast to his forehead and exhaled sharply. I swear to Christ, surely living is more important than this stupid game of legal tag. It's not. Izuku mumbled, his head down. Quiet enough that it was probably an accident, but everyone heard it. Kid, why do you think that? Izuku's eyes widened as he realized his mistake. Kid, we care about you. Bullshit, Izuku spat. You don't even know who the hell I am. You don't know what I've been through. What you said at the USJ, to Shigaraki, was that true? Aizawa asked calmly. Izuku paled, answering the question in itself. Hitoshi didn't know what he said, but he could guess. Something about his quirklessness or suicide attempt. What do you mean? Hitoshi tried not to wince in sympathy. Izuku had a problem with his stutter when he was in a lot of emotional stress. What you said about the middle school bullies doing worse than Shigaraki? I don't know what you. Izuku was cut off by Hitoshi stepping in between them. Aizawa, he's uncomfortable. I'll tell you what Oracle is comfortable letting you know later. Aizawa was about to speak up, before letting it drop. Alright, also, thanks. You saved my life. Just remember that nothing is more important than your well-being. With that, Aizawa left. The two were silent for a moment before Hitoshi spoke up. He's right, you know. Why the F? Did you put our actual address on your school forms? I forgot. Hitoshi complained. What, forgot that we're homeless? I hate you sometimes. If you weren't heavily bandaged, I'd kick your butt. Who do you think is gonna be the sub? Ashido asked excitedly. Shinso sighed and leaned over to Kaminari, who laughed him off. Bakugou looked sad as usual, and Momo and Jair were talking. Shudo wasn't blind, he could see his best friend's crush on the other girl as they both tried desperately to flirt. And Shudo can't blame her, honestly. He could admit that Jairu looked aesthetically pleasing. But Shudo wasn't having another sexuality crisis today. Seeing that green-haired boy buying coffee waving to him on the first day was enough for him. Everything came to a stop as the door swung open, and Aizawa walked in covered head to toe in bandaging. His eyes were barely visible and his arms were both in casts. The silence was broken by Kaminari shouting, "What the hell?" as he handed over 1,000 yen to a smirking Shinso. Sensei, are you sure you should be teaching right now? Ida asked, already standing and chopping his arm up and down. I'm perfectly fine, he grumbled. This is more important than bedrest. Sir, with all due respect, do you think that any type of rest is important? Kaminari asked, earning a snort out of Shinso, one that he actually hadn't heard before, and a grumble from Aizawa. Anyways, something important is coming up. Everyone leaned forward in anticipation and Aizawa let the beat of silence drag on as long as possible. The UA Sports Festival will continue. It's in 2 weeks. The class erupted into a mix of cheers and relieved sighs. Except for Shudo, who sat in the back of the room. Expressionless as always, but inside he was terrified. Because God knows what the hell Endeavor would do to him between now and the sports festival. He was snapped out of his thoughts by Aizawa coughing into his cast. Shinso, meet me after class. All of you demons go to lunch now. Shudo walked out, dismissing Momo's invitation to eat with them, saying he wanted to ask Aizawa about the work. He stood outside the door to the classroom and strained his ears, trying to figure out what was being said. So, is he okay? Aizawa asked. Is he ever? Shinso replied. Fair. Why the hell do you live with him though? Aizawa asked. Shudo knew he shouldn't do this, but he'd been suspicious of the brainwasher ever since the USJ. He nearly had a panic attack after hearing Oracle hadn't been found after the fight. He saved my butt and I saved his. Mutually assured destruction. Shinso said plainly. Some papers were shuffled. That's not what that phrase means, but all right. Aizawa grumbled. So, did you get what I needed? No, he refused to tell me anything. But I'm just gonna say, whatever you heard while he was fighting Shigaraki. It was probably true. He apparently lost his sheet at him, which doesn't happen often. Think it's happened twice. Once was on a stuck-up bully he saved who was asking intrusive questions. Shinso explained. Anyways, I've got to get to lunch. Capture scarf training after school today? Sure. Also, kid? Don't let Midnight see how you act with Kaminari though. She doesn't need any more shipping fuel. Look, I'm working on it, Shoyuda. Aizawa groaned. Oracle can call me that because he's saved my butt countless times. You don't get to call me that, you feral demon. I don't need 2 problem children. And yet you tutor me. See ya. Shudo had barely any time to move before the door swung open, and Shinso was stepping out. When the brainwasher realized Shudo was there, an eyebrow raised with minor concern flickering behind his eyes. What do you want? Shudo's mind raced for an excuse, looking for something that would excuse him from essentially eavesdropping. He was good at this type of stuff. He could lie to save himself. He took a deep breath to steady himself, and said the first thing that came to mind. Are you Aizawa's secret child? Shudo had a rare break from training. Granted, that was because it was currently 2 in the morning and Shudo couldn't sleep from a mix of nightmares and pain. His right side was throbbing from overuse, and his left side burned from suppression. He sat on his front step, staring at the stars. It was oddly peaceful. The stars had always made him feel calmer. As a child he loved space. The thought of something being so beautiful, yet just out of reach to everyone. It made him feel less alone. Like everyone was just behind the barrier of magnificent freedom. Freedom for him, stardust for others. Just on the other side of the uncrossable barrier. It was nice to feel connected in some way. He was shaken from his thoughts by a pair of feet stepping on the grass just out of his peripheral vision. Before he could react, a voice spoke up. It's beautiful, isn't it, Shudo? He whipped his head over to see a familiar boy standing there, green hair ruffled. He was looking up to the sky as well. His left arm was in a sling, and the area just below his hairline was wrapped in makeshift medical bandages. His right arm was in a cast, but could be moved freely. He wore a t-shirt, and his skin that was uncovered by the casts had several scars littering it. Star-shaped burns, cuts, scrapes, stabs, too much for someone of his age. Who are you? Shudo asked. He didn't feel like the boy was malicious at all, but it was still best to err on the side of caution. I used to love the constellations, you know. Still do, to some degree. The boy had a nice voice, calm and nice to listen to. Something that Shudo could probably fall asleep to. The boy looked at Shudo, and his eyes widened when he saw the boy's freckles. They were too familiar. I've seen you buying coffee before. On the first day of you waved to me. Shudo put together out loud. The boy nodded. I remember seeing you that day. Weird that we've met, 5 times now? And only during one of them were neither of us seriously injured. The boy laughed softly, Oh god, Shudo was having another sexuality crisis because of his laugh what the F, and smiled, slightly sad. Then it hit Shudo like a train. You're Oracle, aren't you? Oracle laughed lightly, sitting down next to him. Yeah. Sorry it took me this long to have a one-on-one talk with you that wasn't interrupted by life-threatening circumstances. He rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly, still staring at the stars. Why show yourself to me? Shudo asked. Oracle flushed red and ducked his head quickly, was still sick from the USJ, and coughed into his cast. I thought it'd be nice to have a friend your age talk to you about this. Instead of some random vigilante, Oracle trailed off, still looking away. Shudo pet an eyebrow up in interest. Talk about what? Shudo asked. Oracle looked up, sympathy bleeding through his steeled expression. Your fire. You don't use it because of Endeavor, right? Shudo froze. The grass around him frosted. What do you mean? Shudo said angrily. There's no way. The vigilante was going to try and convince him to use his fire, not after what Endeavor did to him. Not after what he said to Shudo on that rooftop. Your fire. Why don't you use it? Oracle asked, not backing down. It's his fire and I won't use it. Shudo began, before being lightly hit on the head by Oracle's cast. You're a idiot, Shudo. Oracle leaned his head back to look at the stars, not caring about Shudo's icy glare. Let me tell you a story. It's about a boy named Izuku Midoriya. At a young age of 4, he was cursed with a single genetic mutation, a 1 in a million chance. Oracle began. What does this have to do with anything? Shudo asked coldly. You'll find out. He answered before continuing. He was bullied for 10 years of his life relentlessly. Spider lilies on his desk, burns and bruises on his skin every day from kids using their quirks on him, and then he was pushed over the edge. He was told to kill himself by his childhood friend, then All Might himself found him and laughed in his face for having a dream. Oracle looked over to Shudo calmly, a sad smile on his face. He took his friend's advice. Shudo hissed in sympathy, a knee-jerk reaction. Oracle laughed quietly. Want to know why all this happened? Why? Shudo asked. Surely this kid had done something wrong, surely? He was born without a quirk. Shudo's eyes widened. That was why he was treated that way? It made him set off, though it didn't show through his stoic mask. In the entire world, 20% of the population is quirkless. But in Japan, only about 0.5% of the population is quirkless, a majority of which is the elderly. So you can imagine how he was treated. He wished every day that he would be born with a quirk, just so that he could have a friend. Oracle said, downcast. And now you spit on his grave by refusing to use your fire, by letting Endeavor control you. By refusing to use your fire, you let him have control over you. No, you Shudo floundered. What was he supposed to say to that? Finally he settled on, are you that boy? I found him before he died. Oracle said solemnly. He's actually the reason I do this. I want to help people like him. So please. First. Don't let Endeavor control you anymore. Before Shudo could respond, a voice from inside called out. Shudo? Who are you talking to? Shudo turned to the voice to see Fuyumi open the door, rubbing sleep out of her eyes. Shudo turned to where Oracle was, but he was already gone, leaving in his wake a single, wilted spider lily. Shudo. Just a friend. Sorry for waking you, Fuyumi. Hitoshi sat in the waiting room for the sports festival, waiting for the first round to start, when he heard a familiar voice call his name out. Shinso. He turned around to see Todoroki staring him down. The entire room had gone silent, awaiting the exchange. Todoroki, Hitoshi responded. They stared at each other, neither backing down. Objectively, I think I'm stronger than you. Todoroki said. Hitoshi snorted. You fucking think? He remarked under his breath, but Todoroki either didn't notice or didn't comment. You have several people in your corner, as do I. I just wanted to say that I am going to beat you. With only my ice. Shinso was about to harshly laugh, before the last comment registered in his brain. With only my ice. If this was him from 10 months ago, he would have antagonized Todoroki about it to make him crack. would have scoffed, saying that someone with a quirk like that wouldn't have anything to worry about. But he was different now. He'd learned who he was himself, and more about other people. So instead of hiding himself away more, he did the opposite. He reached out. If you think I'm gonna let you steamroll me without your full power, you're effing insane. Shinso stood up, looking Todoroki in the eyes. I don't care how immaculate your control over your ice is, I can and will still kick your butt if you hold back. We've all trained to be here, and we all deserve it, sans Mineta. An offending squawk from the mentioned party. So don't you dare hold back, Todoroki. Don't even think about it. The icy resolve behind Todoroki's eyes stuttered just a bit, hope glittering through like sun refracting through the ice. As quickly as it came though, it was locked back again, as if hope would be punished. He simply nodded and turned on his heel and walked out. In the background was Bakugou angrily grumbling, and everyone else talking about a declaration of war. Hitoshi just knew he had someone to save. Hizashi sat down at the microphone next to Shoyuta, moments before they turned on. Shoyuta merely raised an eyebrow as the loud man hastily sat down and readjusted his mic. As he spoke about the sports festival, with Shoyuta giving an occasional quip or jab at his husband when called upon, Shoyuta felt himself slip deeper into his thoughts. He only snapped out of it when his personal student stepped up to give a speech. Shinso stood up and grabbed the mic, looking extremely frazzled and surprised. So, nobody told me I was supposed to give a speech, but I guess you don't get a warning at the starting line in life, he began. Shoyuta had to repress a smirk under the bandages that covered his face. The line also got a laugh from most of the audience, and Shinso waited for them to quiet down before he continued. Anyway, this isn't a comedy show, although I could seriously consider that as a secondary career option. I was approached earlier by someone who said they were gonna hold back during this, and to that I say, go home. Shinso readjusted slightly. We're all out here giving it our all, and have the audacity to hold back due to some petty argument? Shinso looked around at all the students, eyes stuttering over Todoroki, whose stoic face was furrowed in anger, before continuing. We all deserve to be here, we all fought for our place, so damn it, you all better go plus ultra. The crowd erupted into cheers, and midnight approached to explain the first game. As soon as Hizashi turned off the mic and was about to say something, the vent fell down and a head of green hair popped out. Jesus effing Christ! Hizashi shouted, as Shoyuta pet an eyebrow. Morning to you too, soon-to-be adoptive father. Oracle said, dropping from the vent. He had the standard hoodie, but his jeans were replaced with a skirt and black thigh highs with snowflakes on them. He also looked mere moments away from passing out. Is this a lifestyle change or a fashion statement? Shoyuta asked in a flat voice. Fashion. Statement. I woke up this morning and chose femboy instead of violence. Oracle said simply, pulling out a folding chair from the vent and propping it up in between the pros. Why are you here? Hizashi asked, slightly recovered from his Oracle-induced heart attack. Bored. I can't go out and patrol cause my arms are still broken. Oracle said with a shrug. And to fuel your hopeless pining for my student? Shoyuta asked. Oracle nodded, before realizing what the man said. Wait, what? How do you know about that? He grabbed Shoyuta by the shoulders and started to shake him. Who told you? I'm pretty sure the only other one who doesn't know is Todoroki, kid. Shoyuta deadpanned immediately. I hate you. Oracle responded with a pout. The obstacle course wasn't much. Hitoshi placed 14th, and the first place winner was Todoroki, while second place was taken by a fuming Bakugou. The second game was announced, a cavalry battle, which, how was that supposed to work? Were they supposed to just carry each other on their shoulders? And people split up for teams. Todoroki was being approached by a few people, looking to join his team. Hitoshi turned around to see the Uraraka looking around, lonely. Before he could approach her, a hand grasped his shoulder. Freeloader-kun. They shouted. Hitoshi sighed and turned around to see Mei standing there, proudly. Mei. He acknowledged. Team. Okay. Hitoshi said, resigned. He turned around and saw Uraraka standing there shyly. Do you think that maybe I could join Dash? Yes. You'll do great at showing off my babies. Mei shouted as she shook Uraraka's shoulders back and forth, and Uraraka went wide-eyed. You have children? It's what she calls her inventions. Hitoshi explained. Uraraka nodded weakly. Now, any ideas for a final team member? May I fill the void? Izuku leaned back in his chair as the cavalry battle started. He didn't doubt that Hitoshi would win, and Shudo had better FING win. And Bakugou? Well, he didn't want to think about Bakugou right now. He was still bitter with the boy for the 10 years of abuse, so he was reluctant to interact with him. One time on patrol had been enough. He had gotten out of the commentating booth when the race started, and was now pacing around the vents. Occasionally he'd stumble across a teacher talking to someone. Yagi was not slick. The man had a mumbling habit worse than Izuku, and that was saying something. Or a bitter Gen Ed student who lost, but nothing too important. He popped up to his viewing area, on top of the commentating booth, and watched the cavalry battle. There was about a minute and a half left. Some 1B kids were taunting Bakugou over his loss of a headband, and Shudo still had his 10 million headband along with a few others. He trapped his team inside a glacier with an open roof, the walls jagged and impossible to climb. It was a good plan if Mei wasn't on a team with Hitoshi. She quite literally flew. Did a gravity quirk help them? That brunette girl looks familiar. Over the glacial walls, landing Hitoshi's team in the ring with only Shudo. Before anyone could move, Mini Ingenium sped full force backwards and an ice dome was created around Hitoshi. Izuku looked at the dome, and smirked when he saw no light was getting in. Moments later, the dome shattered in an explosion of darkness. So he was right about Fumicage's quirk. It did in fact get more powerful the darker it is. The icy mist of the destroyed glacier hadn't even disappeared when Hitoshi's group dashed out of it, going straight past Shudo's group. In that moment, 3 things happened. 1, 2 headbands were ripped off Shudo's body. The one on his head by Hitoshi, and one around his neck by Dark Shadow. 2, Shudo's left arm burst into flame for a moment, just a moment, before he extinguished it with an angry, shocked look on his stoic mask. Nobody else would be able to tell, but Izuku had studied Shudo's face a lot. Wait, what? No, not in a gay way, he thought, flustered. God, Shoyuta was right. He was hopeless. And finally, Hizashi screamed out, game. And Bakugou fell face first onto the cement floor, which Izuku burst out laughing at. Truly, his day was made from a boy falling 15 feet out of the air onto cement, and then punching the ground in rage. He's becoming corrupted to abstract humor. God damn. Before he could continue his train of thought, Hizashi interrupted it with his voice. All right, listeners. The points have been totaled, and the winners will be decided. Izuku swore he could hear Shoyuta mumble something about it being too dim and loud. In first places, Team Todoroki. Midnight called out. Izuku looked to see 3 of them celebrating. Denki ran over to Hitoshi excitedly, and the other boy's blush was so prominent it could be seen from the crowd, and Shudo ducking his head, grabbing his left arm. Izuku winced in sympathy. He was probably going through a lot of emotions right now. In second place is Team Bakugou. Bakugou was screaming in rage, while the other 3 tried to cheer him up while staying a safe distance away. In third place is Team Minoma. Izuku saw the blonde in question laughing at a few of Class 1's members, who did not give a single sheet. And finally, for the end of the qualifiers, is Team Shinso. Hitoshi visibly let out a sigh of relief, and Mei was ecstatic at being able to compete in the one-on-ones. 2 people approached Midnight and talked to her. She nodded in understanding and they walked off. 2 people have dropped out of the final round, so 2 members of Team Azui will be moving on. Izuku smiled slightly at that. The 2 that had dropped out had great quirks for underground heroics and stealth, so it was likely that they were going into those fields. Good on them for not putting themselves in the spotlight. The bracket for the one-on-ones came up, and Izuku quickly looked it over. The first match would begin in 10 minutes, and would be between Kaminari Denki and Nito Minoma. After that was the Vine Lady versus Hitoshi. After that was Shudo against the tape dispenser boy. Then Mini Ingenium versus Mei. Izuku smiled and ducked into a vent. He had hopeless romantics to set up. Denki Kaminari was a normal guy. A perfectly normal bisexual disaster who thought that 90% of people were objectively pretty. He had a few superficial crushes over the years, the most recent one on Jairu, though he got over that pretty quickly, and the two laughed about it later, so he thought that those were what normal crushes were like. Then he saw Shinso Hitoshi blush. And goddamn, did he fall hard for him. Like, he flirted with the boy earlier because he didn't know how else to break the ice, and yeah, he thought Shinso was pretty before, but dimmin'. Seeing that blush made him 50% sure that every other crush he had bullshit that his brain spewed to throw him off track from this hot man. So you can imagine his surprise when a femboy dropped out of the vents, with a sling and a cast on his arms, and said, "Oi gay-ass, I'm getting you together with Hitoshi." And then pushed Denki into a prep room before he could react. As soon as the door shut, the femboy sat him down at a chair and sat across from him. "Who the hell are you?" Denki asked, eyes wide. "Are you kidnapping me?" "Kidnapping is lame, so no." The femboy responded. "Anyway, I have an idea. You're gonna have to trust me on this one." "I still don't know who you are." Denki said. "Doesn't matter, I know your massive mutual crush on Hitoshi, and Denki sputtered before the femboy could finish what he was saying. Wait, whoa, slow the hell down, did you say mutual?" Denki stood up, eyes wide and a little electricity sparkling around his body. "Yes, are you deaf?" The femboy pet an eyebrow before continuing. "Anyway, I have a plan that likely will not work. The first match is in 5 minutes. Are you ready to humiliate a complete jackass?" Before Denki could respond, a cat meowing started coming from his pocket. "Sorry, phone." He picked it up and held it to his ear. "What's up?" A beat of silence. Then the femboy stood up violently and overturned a chair. "I'm gonna effing kill that beastie. Oh my effing gut, that's on the back burner, I'll talk to you in a bit." The hell piece of shit. He hung up and angrily stuffed the phone in his pocket. "Sorry, business. Anyway, time to plan." Hitoshi was out looking for where Todoroki asked him to meet up. His match was after Kaminari's, so he needed to make this quick. He must have spaced out because he hit his head on something and stumbled slightly. He looked up to see the blonde from 1B, Monomo, smirking at him. "Oh, sorry, your head was so big that I couldn't avoid it." His voice was a sickly sweet that made Hitoshi want to puke. He looked the boy up and down before making a verdict. "You're gonna get your butt handed to you harder than Bakugou will." Hitoshi decided. Monomo, who cares if that's his name, Hitoshi decided. He doesn't deserve his real name, looked shocked that someone spoke back, before regaining his composure. "Really now am I? I'm going up against that useless electric boy, aren't I? Give me a break, he'll short-circuit before the fight even begins." Monomo laughed. Hitoshi had to repress the urge to break his nose. "You know, part of me hopes you win this fight," Hitoshi said, gritting his teeth. "Just so that I can break your FNG nose. I just want you to know I could kick your butt 6 ways to Sunday, but there's no goddamn way you're gonna get past Kaminari that easily. Get the hell out of your head, Monomo. Or, whatever the hell your name is." Hitoshi turned on his heel, walking down the hall and leaving a stunned Monomo in the hall. As he turned the corner, he saw Todoroki standing there with a slightly raised eyebrow. "So do you just eavesdrop on all my conversations recently, or are you just getting lucky?" Hitoshi deadpanned. "Just lucky. Now, can we talk?" Todoroki asked. Hitoshi nodded, and Todoroki breathed in slowly, exhaling just as slow. Then he met Hitoshi's gaze. "You made me break my pledge. My pledge not to use his fire." Hitoshi's eyes narrowed at him, and the other boy leaned against the wall and looked at his left hand. "Todoroki, what do you mean by that? Have you ever heard of quirk marriages?" Hitoshi's heart dropped and his eyes widened. He blinked slowly a few times, before pulling out his phone. He quickly made his way to a familiar contact and called. "What's up?" Izuku's voice came from the other side. "You're right about Todoroki's quirk," Hitoshi said simply. Immediately, the sound of a chair falling and Izuku screaming came through loud enough that Hitoshi pulled the phone away from his ear. "I'm gonna effing kill that beastie. Oh my effing that's on the back burner right now. I'll talk to you in a bit." The hell piece of sure dash. The call ended in a beep, and Hitoshi stuffed the phone back in his pocket. Was that Oracle? Todoroki asked, shock prevalent on his face. No, that was the bank. They've been trying to reach me about my car's extended warranty. Hitoshi responded. When Todoroki was silent for a moment, Hitoshi scratched the back of his neck. Sorry, I cope with humor. Why did Oracle respond like that? Todoroki asked, as Kaminari was called up to fight Monoma. Because he's been researching how to take Endeavor down due to his massive martyr complex mixed with homoromantic tension, Hitoshi answered. I don't know what that means, Todoroki answered blankly. Nothing important. Anyway, you're the product of Endeavor's shitty parenting. Hitoshi asked. He bred for my quirk and trained me since I was 4. He also abused my mom and broke her to the point where she poured boiling water on my eye. Todoroki answered far too calmly for what he was describing. Hitoshi winced in sympathy. That's why you don't use your fire? And I'll beat you without it, Todoroki answered. Well, now that's effing bullshit, now isn't it? Hitoshi snarked. It's your power. I'll see you in the semi-finals. Before Todoroki could respond, Hitoshi walked to the entrance to the next match. Just in time to watch Kaminari punch a brain-fried Monoma out of the ring. If he didn't already love Sparks, he sure as F did now. The first round of the sports festival was not too interesting. Apart from Kaminari decking Monoma in the face as hard as humanly possible without it being classified as excessive force for an unconscious person, it was standard. Hitoshi pretty easily brainwashed his opponent, and that was that. Todoroki created a hole but glacier in the field, which took 15 minutes to get rid of. Ida got exploited for a commercial by Mei, Yaozu got overwhelmed by Hitoshi's fellow emo vent gremlin, Tokoyami, and Shoji vs. Kirishima was a good fight involving lots of punching. Mina, she insisted everyone call her that, tried to get a punch on Tsu, but the frog girl was too agile and kicked Mina out of bounds quickly. Finally, Bakugou vs. Uraraka, which was surprisingly close. Hitoshi wasn't looking forward to fighting Bakugou, if he even made it past Todoroki. As the second round began, he looked at a sparking Kaminari across the stage. Midnight cracked her whip, and Hitoshi tried to think. How do I get him to respond? Think like Denki, think like Denki, think like Denki. He probably could have made some dumb pun and won. But for some reason, his one-track mind decided to spit something else out. Wanna go on a date after this? Thought too much like Denki if dash. Kaminari stopped in his tracks, eyes wide and face red. Wait, what dash? He was cut off by Hitoshi's brainwashing. Walk out of bounds, he commanded. As soon as Kaminari was out of bounds, and Midnight stopped cackling in the background, Hitoshi was announced the winner. As he was walking to the waiting stands to watch, Kaminari caught up to him. Hey Shinso. I just wanted to say, Kaminari rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. No hard feelings, you did what you had to win. Hitoshi's gut churned with guilt as he gave a non-committal hum. Then, Kaminari spoke up again. So is the offer still up? If Hitoshi was drinking something he would have just spat it out right then and there. It would have been the most spectacular spit take of the century. Kaminari laughed loudly as Hitoshi quickly looked away. I'm kidding, but your reaction was priceless dash. Kaminari stopped for a moment, looking closer at Hitoshi. Then his eyes widened like he just had an epiphany. Hey, you're blushing. No, I'm not, Hitoshi responded instantly. Yeah, you are, I can see your face. Admit it, Toshi, you're blushing. Kaminari teased lightly. Shut the hell up, Hitoshi responded with little bite. After a beat of silence, Denki spoke up again. I mean, if the offer's up, then I'll gladly take it. Hitoshi looked up to Denki to see him looking down the hall, hands in his pockets with a blush dusting his cheeks. Not saying it is, but I think it'd be pretty cool if we went on a date. See where it goes from there. Wait, what the F dash dot? Hitoshi said flatly. You want to go out with me? Denki asked, looking up at Hitoshi hopefully. I'm too gay for this, he mumbled as he brought Denki into a tight hug. From the vents, a femboy gave a maniacal giggle at the sight. In the stands, Mina Ashido brightened slightly, as if something she'd been working on finally paid out. Round 2 of the one-on-one fights came and went. After Hitoshi's victory, in more ways than one, the rest of the battles were mundane at best. Todoroki froze Ida clean to the ground, Bakugou fought Kirishima and eventually won, despite how close it was. Tsu got thrown out of the ring by Dark Shadow, who profusely apologized afterwards. Round 3 though, Hitoshi wasn't looking forward to. As he stepped up to the stage, he stared down his opponent. Todoroki. It would be easy to win, but being a hero wasn't about winning. It was about saving people. And saving Todoroki from himself was going to be a lot harder than just winning. Mainly because the second the match started, Hitoshi had to dive to the side to avoid a massive ice spike rocketing towards him. Come on Todoroki, can't you hit me? Another glacier, one that Hitoshi barely dodged. The air was freezing, and both of their breaths were visible as cool mist. It would be easier to hit me if another glacier rocketed past him, missing him by less than an inch. Still, Hitoshi wasn't deterred. If you used your fire... A much larger glacier slammed into him, sending him flying backwards as Todoroki approached. Before Hitoshi could fully stand, he was frozen to the floor. Todoroki gave a steely look to him, one coated in rage. Hitoshi struggled more, and Todoroki turned around. Todoroki, use your full power. Stop hiding behind your resentment and accept that it's yours. Can you move Shinso? Midnight asked. Hitoshi ignored her. He had a job to do. Do you want to get to the top while holding back? Hitoshi screamed at him. His voice was hoarse from the cold, but he didn't give up. Do you want to doom countless people to their death because you bend to Endeavor's will? Todoroki stopped in his tracks. If you continue down this track of thought, you're much more likely to be like him than if you use your fire dash. Shut up. Todoroki shouted back, turning on his heel to look at Shinso. At that moment, his eyes looked blank. Everything was silent, until Hitoshi gave the command he hoped he wouldn't regret. Melt me, then light yourself ablaze. Todoroki melted him, stepped back a few feet, then his left side erupted into a pillar of flame. Just as soon as it came, it was extinguished by Todoroki regaining control. Why, the boy looked Hitoshi up and down. You could have won. You tricked me into responding. Why would you? I'm not going down without a fight, Todoroki. And neither are you. So use your fire dash. You know why I won't use it. Todoroki responded harshly, sending out a glacier. Hitoshi dodged to the right, before another glacier slammed into his left arm with a sickening crack of his arm. The adrenaline was pumping too hard for him to care. He sprinted forward and punched Todoroki as hard as he could in the chest, sending him stumbling back. Your reasoning is terrible. Hitoshi screamed at him. It isn't his fire. It's your quirk, your genetics. Todoroki tried to stand, his right leg shaking from the cold. Ice had built up all over his body. You can't survive in a world of heroes if you repress your power. Because that's what it is, it's your quirk. Todoroki faltered for a moment. His right arm dropped, the ice on his fingertips receding. Then the ice on his face and arm, and all over his body. Steam started to rise in the air, as small flames flickered over his body. Then, without warning, a pillar of flame erupted from his body. Todoroki had a feral grin on his face, and Hitoshi smiled at what he'd done. What are you smiling about? You basically just guaranteed my win. Todoroki asked, confusion knitted into his face. I achieved my goal, Hitoshi replied simply. Out of his peripheral vision, he saw Endeavor flare up, before being slammed over the head by a fire extinguisher which exploded over him. He had to hold back a snort of laughter as he dodged a blast of flame that rocketed past him. He tried to approach, but an ice dome slammed over him and trapped him inside. Shinso, can you move? Midnight's voice was muffled by the ice dome between them. Hitoshi rolled his eyes. Does it look like I can move? He called out, the annoyed touch still in his voice despite his happiness. Midnight hummed in response, before cracking her whip. All right then, Shinso is eliminated, the winner is Dash. I forfeit. Todoroki interrupted. The ice dome melted, and Hitoshi stood up. They looked each other in the eyes, Midnight standing on the sidelines with a shocked look on her face. Shinso could have won at any time, but chose not to in order to open my eyes. I forfeit the win to him, he deserves it. Before anyone could say anything, Todoroki walked off the stage with a small smile on his face. I guess. Todoroki forfeits? Shinso is the winner. Midnight cracked her whip, and the crowd erupted into confused cheering. Hitoshi had a small smile on his face. He wasn't planning on winning this round, but the surprise was welcome. As the next two contestants were called, Hitoshi went to where Todoroki was likely going. Shudo sat down in the preparation room Shinso was supposed to use for his next round, passing a scowling Bakugou on his way. As soon as he sat down, the vent cover was kicked off and a femboy oracle popped out, quickly pulling him into a hug. I'm so proud of you, Shudo. Oracle pulled himself from the hug, and Shudo's eyes widened. Your casts? Did you take your casts off before they healed? Shudo huffed in annoyance as he took one of Oracle's hands into his own. Oracle coughed slightly, and Shudo looked up to see him pointedly looking away with red cheeks. Is he perpetually sick? And rubbing the back of his head with his other hand. No? Not exactly. Recovery girl healed them up. Something about how I'm very lucky the burns didn't cause long-lasting nerve damage nor need a skin graft dash. Oracle was interrupted by Shinso and Kaminari walking through the door, the latter being dragged while laughing his butt off, hand in hand. Oh my god, I never knew Todoroki was a male wife, holy shit. He's the male wife to Oracle's girl boss. Shinso said flatly. This caused Kaminari to double over laughing, tears in his eyes. Shut the hell up, Toshi. Oracle pouted, which even despite the voice-changing mask, sounded adorable. Still, Shudo had one important question. What's a male wife? For some reason, that caused everyone in the room to collapse with laughter. Are they together? Kaminari asked after recovering. Oracle's face flooded red, and Shinso and Shudo both responded at the same time. Pretty much, Shinso said. I mean, we're right next to each other, Shudo pointed out helpfully. Can we go back to talking about Shudo's fire? Oracle whined, even through the voice changer it sounded adorable, what the hell, and Kaminari's eyes widened. Oh yeah, that was cool as hell. The pillar of fire was sick as hell. Your quirk is awesome, Kaminari said excitedly. I really like the part when Oracle smashed a fire extinguisher over Endeavor's head when Todoroki finally used it, Shinso commented. That was cathartic, Oracle quietly admitted. The speaker overhead said something about the next round beginning soon, and Shudo nodded as Shinso walked off with Kaminari to his next match. Shudo turned to Oracle, before noticing that he looked dead on his feet. When was the last time you slept? He asked, concern flooding his face. The other boy turned red quickly and hung his head. 2 days ago? Sleep. I'll stay with you. Shudo said, ignoring his own exhaustion. Oracle nodded sleepily, before slumping down on the bench he was sitting at, closing his eyes, and falling asleep on Shudo's shoulder. How the hell was he supposed to deal with this? Looking for Todoroki while the award ceremony was being set up was easier than Shoyuta thought. He heard Shinsu's snickering from waiting room 1, and poked his head in. The brainwasher was taking a photo of Oracle, with his head slumped on Todoroki and arms wrapped around him, both sleeping. Shoyuta stepped in, standing next to Shinso. The boy gave him a worried look, and Shoyuta looked back at him. Does he cling to people in his sleep? The question made Shinso snort in laughter. I got him a teddy bear for his birthday and this is the first time he's slept without it. He doesn't know that I know he sleeps with it in his arms. Shinso closed his eyes, a tired acceptance filling his body. You're gonna need to wake them for the awards ceremony. Todoroki got third. Shoyuta looked back at the sleeping kids and gave a small smile, hidden by his capture scarf. He grabbed a small blanket from a cupboard and draped it over them. We can delay it a bit further. The problem child needs his sleep. The fight with Bakugou was uneventful, as Hitoshi found it pretty easy to provoke the boy by calling him out as a bully with a superiority and inferiority complex who was carried through life by his quirk. To be honest, it could have been grounded in realism, judging by the shapes of the explosions, or maybe Todoroki's conspiracies were wearing off on him. Speaking of Todoroki, he had earlier walked in on Izuku sleeping on him, and when he woke up, he was very reluctant to move. Eventually he did, and ended up attending the award ceremony for his third-place medal. Izuku allegedly woke up in the commentator booth, quickly turned red when realizing the position he must have been found in, and disappearing into the vents, if Aizawa's word is to be trusted. Now, he was looking around for the gremlin, hand in hand with his boyfriend. Does this count as a date? Denki asked out of the blue. We're searching for my FING gremlin of an adopted brother. Do you think it counts as a date? Hitoshi countered, eyebrows raised. I don't know, babe, does it? Denki replied with a sheet-eating grin on his face. Hitoshi rubbed his temples, exasperated. For the love of God, Denks dash. Young Shinso. Hitoshi was interrupted by a familiar booming voice behind him. He turned around to see All Might standing there. Hi, he replied cautiously. Can I talk to you in private for a second? He asked, almost sheepishly. Hitoshi nodded, prying his hand away from Denki's, making the electric boy look like a kicked puppy. They walked for a bit in silence, before All Might pulled him into a small office and sat him down. Now, I want to preface this by telling you that this is highly confidential. I hope that you understand my caution with this secret. Hitoshi nodded, and the man deflated into a skeleton with a puff of smoke. Hitoshi raised an eyebrow in confusion. I mean, cool, but why tell me? All Might looked at the boy, then sighed. Let me tell you a story about two brothers. All Might said, sitting down and gesturing for Hitoshi.